LoveLore Library. Chapter 289. Su Rong and Ming Chu met during their university days. At that time, Su Rong's parents had passed away early, and she was just an ordinary girl. Ming Chu was her senior, and they met through a volunteer program. At that time, Ming Chu was still very outstanding. He could have been admitted to a better school and carried out his brilliant life as a postgraduate and doctoral student, but he gave up all of this for Su Rong. At that time, Su Rong couldn't believe all of this. Since she was young, she didn't have the guidance of her parents. She experienced a lot of the fickleness of human nature, and most of the time, she was looked down upon. She was very poor, so poor that she couldn't even afford a basic cell phone. Being with Ming Chu was the happiest time of her life. They graduated one after another. For Su Rong, Ming Chu gave up his postgraduate studies and started working early. Because his parents didn't agree to him and Su Rong being together. In order to support Su Rong and himself, he needed to enter society earlier. At that time, they were very bitter. They were like countless duckweeds wandering in the world. Perhaps their lives weren't so smooth, but they lived more happily than anyone else. Every day when they returned home, Ming Chu would prepare dinner. Countless nights, he would gently pull Su Rong into his arms and hug her to sleep. That was the warmest moment of her life. Their happy life didn't last long. Ming Chu was tricked by his parents. They didn't let them meet. They struggled and despaired, but they didn't start any other love. Some people, once they were set on someone, would stay with them forever. Su Rong knew that Ming Chu was her sky. They struggled for a few years. It wasn't until they were almost 30 that Ming Chu's parents finally gave in. They finally got married and had their own little family. Su Rong thought that her happy days had arrived. Although she and Ming Chu had experienced many years of ups and downs, they had also achieved a positive outcome. What was rare was that they didn't smooth out their edges and corners. Their love for each other was still passionate and gentle. Perhaps you won't understand what it feels like to want to be with the person you love the most all the time. I love him, and he loves me. We wish that we couldn't be apart at all times. My biggest regret is that we didn't have the crystallization of our love, or that we didn't have the time. Su Rong's tone was indifferent. She seemed to have cried enough. At this moment, she was smiling as she said these words. It wasn't the kind of smile that was deliberately faked, but a genuine smile of happiness. Then the nightmare came. Ming Chu liked to climb mountains, but Su Rong did not allow such a dangerous hobby after they got married. That day, Su Rong was in class. It was rare for him to have a day off, so he persuaded Su Rong. This mountain was not steep, and many people went there. It was just a natural weekend off. Su Rong even wanted to accompany him again the next day. Who would have thought that fate would be so heinous? He slipped and fell off the cliff. When Su Rong received the news, she almost fainted. During that time, she was absent-minded. She didn't eat or sleep. She didn't know what she was doing in life. The days without Ming Chu were terrifyingly cold. She was filled with regret and despair. She felt that there was no reason for her to continue living. She thought that she might have heard wrongly. Ming Chu was still alive. He would come back. He would definitely come back. Later, when she opened the door, she saw Ming Chu standing outside with a gentle smile. Rong Rong, are you awake? It was so real, as if all hope for life had been born in an instant. Chapter 290. After saying this, she closed her eyes. I know it's fake, but what does it matter? He really did come back. As long as she had Ming Chu with her in her last days. He was still by her side, just like in her memory. He would still call her Rong Rong. She could feel the changes in her body. She had no regrets. Compared to others, she was so lucky to be able to spend her last days with the person she loved the most. Xiao Jin looked at the smile on her face. An indescribable emotion flashed through her heart. She only asked, "Isn't it good to be alive?" Su Rong said, "You will know that there is no meaning in living without him." Her life had been extremely difficult. She had no parents, no money, and no ability. Her life was the portrayal of thousands of ordinary people. Many people spent their entire lives like this. She was so lucky to be able to receive Ming Chu's love. She didn't dare to ask for more, but she wasn't willing to give up. Xiao Jin looked at her and fell silent. She didn't know what to say. After a while, she said, "If you are alive, maybe you can meet someone else." Su Rong only looked at her and smiled. "You don't understand. Xiao Jin, no one else will be like him." Xiao Jin glanced at Ming Chu. His gaze was very gentle. It was a gentleness that only looked at her. He only looked at Su Rong. That was how Su Rong remembered him. Because the Ming Chu in her memory was such a person, the Ming Chu who had returned now was such a person. Xiao Jin seemed to understand a little. Su Rong still smiled and asked her, "How much longer do I have?" Xiao Jin hesitated. "There's still half a month." When she couldn't maintain her power, Su Rong and Ming Chu would disappear together. Su Rong said, "That's enough." She didn't have any extravagant hopes in her life. In the last half a month, she could travel the country with Ming Chu. Xiao Jin knew that she couldn't persuade her. She was just suddenly being kind. It was probably because of something. When she walked out of the entrance of the neighborhood, it suddenly started drizzling in the usually warm imperial capital. She went back upstairs, only to find that she hadn't bought an umbrella. Although he wouldn't be drenched by the rain when he walked out, but it might scare others. When she went downstairs, Su Rong's door opened. She handed him a pure white, modern oil paper umbrella embroidered with flying cranes. It was very beautiful. She had a blissful and gentle smile on her face. "Ming Chu bought this for me when he was traveling. I might not need it anymore, so I'll give it to you." Xiao Jin would never accept someone's kindness for no reason. However, at this moment, she hesitated for a moment before finally accepting the umbrella. She said, "Thank you." Su Rong said, "You're welcome." Ming Chu's voice came from inside the door. She turned around and responded. That was something from her memory, so Ming Chu would do it according to her memory. All of this was clearly fake to Xiao Jin, but to Su Rong, it was real. She walked down the stairs and slowly opened the umbrella. On the surface of the umbrella, a painting of flying cranes unfolded. Under a few flying cranes, Su Rong and Ming Chu's names were embroidered on the edge of the umbrella. As she walked, it swayed, but it was still incomparably clear. She held the umbrella and walked in the rain, like a fairy walking from the horizon. Beautiful, but aloof, with a coldness that made people not dare to approach. Chapter 291. When Xiao Jin walked to the entrance of the neighborhood, she saw a car parked by the roadside. She walked over and the car door opened. The rain poured in with the wind and wet the car door in an instant. She quickly closed the umbrella and the rainwater dissipated along the surface of the umbrella. When she sat in the car, the seat was not wet. Xiao Jin said, "Why are you here?" Song Yanqing looked at the umbrella in her hand and showed a hint of curiosity. "You bought it." It was rare to see such beautiful oil paper umbrellas in the city. When she put it away, it was a long section between them. Xiao Jin placed it neatly on her lap. She looked at him first. "A friend gave it to me." "You haven't answered me yet." Song Yanqing retracted his gaze and looked at her again. The weather forecast said it would rain today. I know you stayed here last night, so I came over to settle some things. I also wanted to see if you had left. He paused for a moment and continued, Okay, I'll bring you back. His voice was like the most pleasant sound of a string. Every word fell on the tip of one's heart and shook it. Ah, Tong couldn't help but take a look from the rearview mirror. Was young Master solo from the mother's womb? He didn't dare to believe it. If it were another woman, she would have fallen under his suit pants. Xiao Jin didn't have any special reaction when he heard it. These two were indeed immortals. Immortals wouldn't be easily moved by mortals. You came at the right time. Xiao Jin looked at the rain outside the window. It's just like this when it rains. Song Yanqing chuckled. So have you settled your matters here? Xiao Jin almost. She thought of what she heard from Su Rong and asked him, in this life, isn't living the most important thing? Song Yanqing frowned. Ha! Xiao Jin, why would there be people who don't want to live because of another person's death? She had encountered something that she couldn't understand. Song Yanqing instantly understood what had happened. He said softly, I haven't seen it, but I understand that everyone has different thoughts. Some people's existence could not be replaced by others. Once they disappeared, they would completely lose their sense of direction and would no longer have the motivation to live. Perhaps to that person, the dead person is her motivation to live on. Xiao Jin nodded thoughtfully. She lowered her head and looked at the umbrella on her lap. It was very beautiful. Ming Chu had probably paid a hefty price to buy this umbrella for Su Rong. This was not something that could be produced by an assembly line. Xiao Jin didn't understand why Su Rong had given it to him. Perhaps it was because she felt that she wouldn't be able to take it away after she died. Song Yanqing sensed that Xiao Jin was more depressed than usual. Perhaps this was not how she should be feeling, but he increasingly felt that this Xiao Jin was real enough. In the past, there was always a layer of fog that made it hard for others to see through. She stood at a high position and saw through too many things. In fact, she would not understand the brilliance of this ordinary world. The car drove silently in the direction of the Mu family. In the car, Xiao Jin suddenly said, Why don't you come to my house for dinner tonight? I'll tell Fei Fei to ask the kitchen to cook your favorite food. What do you like to eat? Song Yanqing was a little surprised by Xiao Jin's sudden invitation. Because Xiao Jin had sent him home so many times, he had never mentioned it. He didn't care about this and had decided to visit when the time was right. But now that Xiao Jin had mentioned it, he would definitely not refuse. So he replied, Okay. Chapter 292. Dan felt that his young master had probably turned over a new leaf. Miss Chow had already taken the initiative to invite him home for dinner. Could other matters be far away? Could it be that his young master was finally liberated after being single for decades? Where was his love? Before going home, Xiao Jin naturally called Xiao Fei first. Xiao Fei almost fainted when he received the news that Song Yanqing was coming home for dinner. Song! Lord Song is coming. Xiao Fei was shocked and felt that it was a little sudden. He hadn't come to visit before, but now he was coming. He hurriedly ordered the kitchen to prepare Song Yanqing's favorite dishes. In order not to offend Xiao Jin, he ordered a few dishes that he would eat. Xiao Fei, of course, ordered the kitchen to hurry up and make sure that Lord Song was satisfied. Although the Mu family's chefs had always been 5-star, he didn't know how they compared to the Song family. Song Yanqing was coming, so Mu Jinming rushed home to give him face. Even Mu Xiangshan, who had gone fishing outside, came back. He happened to bump into Mu Jinming. Seeing that he only came back now, Mu Xiangshan snorted coldly. You're working until so late every day. You don't even care about your own health when you're suffering from myocardial strain. I think I'll have to send you off sooner or later. Mu Xiangshan's words were vicious. Mu Zhenming also snorted coldly. You have high blood pressure, yet you still stay up late and wake up early every day. I think you're quite healthy and there's nothing wrong with you. I can still send you off alive. Mu Xiangshan, unfilial son. Song Yanqing was coming home for dinner. Muzillion, who had planned to go to the disco, was also summoned back. If he didn't come back, his leg would be broken. When he came back, he expressed his shock. Brother Yanqing is coming. How good is his relationship with Qiao Jin? Qiao Fei declared, isn't it normal for friends to visit each other? Muzillion, only you would believe that. Qiao Fei snorted. Muzillion couldn't help but sigh. The most powerful person in our family is still Qiao Jin. Look at him. Not only is he fine after provoking Ji Sikai, he even has such a good relationship with Brother Yanqing. It's because he's good-looking that he can do whatever he wants. Musachu, if you're not convinced, you can also change your personality. Muzillion. Are you even human? Muzillion glared at Mu Zhenming. What nonsense are you talking about? Qiao Jin and Guanqing have a normal relationship. What did you say about her provoking Ji Sikai again? Mu Zhenming knew about Ji Sikai. Muzillion didn't tell his family about his return that day, so he told them about it. Mu Zhenming frowned. Forget it. Ji Sikai didn't pursue the matter back then. He won't pursue it behind our backs. Mu Xiangshan snorted coldly, if he can let it slide, he must have taken a liking to your daughter's beauty. Everyone, Muzillion was dumbfounded. That can't be. What kind of beauty hasn't Brother Sikai seen before? That was the first time he met Qiao Jin that day. Although Mu Xiangshan was uncomfortable with Qiao Jin, he still narrowed his eyes and said, You found someone like Qiao Jin? She wasn't extremely beautiful, but with that aura, she was really invincible. They had seen her change and were used to it. Moreover, they were all family and didn't have any messy thoughts. It was different for outsiders. Qiao Fei was also a little worried. Jin is indeed becoming more and more beautiful. I'm just afraid that she'll meet a bad guy. Muzillion. I have a feeling that Qiao Jin is more of a bad guy. Everyone. Chapter 293. At 7:30 p.m., Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing finally arrived. Because of her delay, Song Yanqing might not be able to sleep on time tonight. But it didn't matter. When Song Yanqing appeared in the Mu family mansion, Muzillion even felt that he had found a suitable candidate for the style of his glass room. When he walked in, he was just like Qiao Jin. It was as if he was embracing the wind and the moon, and his whole body was cold. He was tall and slender. When he walked in with Qiao Jin, everyone felt that they were a match made in heaven. Even the innocent Qiao Fei felt that something was wrong when she saw the two of them. Song Yanqing walked in, as gentle as jade. He first greeted, Grandpa Mu, Uncle Mu, Auntie Mu. Hello. Then, he looked at his two younger brothers and smiled. Qi Chu, Qi Lian, hello. Hey, Brother Yanqing, hello, Brother Yanqing. Muzillion was the first to stand up like a lackey. He couldn't stand Song Yanqing being so polite and hurried over to join in the conversation. Qiao Jin looked at him strangely and whispered, You look like the little eunuch on TV that Fei Fei watches. Muzillion, he turned to look at Qiao Jin. Are you going to break off our sibling relationship here? Song Yanqing almost laughed out loud. When he walked over, Mu Zhenming politely invited him to sit down. Mu Xiangshan was an elder and didn't think much of it. He looked at Song Yanqing with a pleasant expression and said with some emotion, Xiao Jin is lucky to have a friend like you. Xiao Jin, Song Yanqing chuckled. Grandpa Mu, you're wrong. It's my fortune to be friends with Xiao Jin. Mu Xiangshan, if you're forced, blink. Mu Zhenming frowned. Dad. Xiao Jin was already used to it. She walked over to Song Yanqing and sat down naturally. The kitchen began to serve the dishes. Xiao Fei said enthusiastically, we made a few dishes that you like. Try them. Song Yanqing smiled and said, thank you. It was his first time visiting, but he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. It was very natural, and it made people feel relieved. After all, he was the young master of the Song family. She was afraid that he would not be easy to get along with. However, just like the rumors said, he looked like a gentle person. It was just, there was an inexplicable similarity between him and Xiao Jin. Could it be that the two of them had been together for a long time? Mu Xiangshan asked a few questions about the Song family, and Song Yanqing answered them one by one. At the dinner table, Mu Zhenming could also discuss some business matters with him. Xiao Jin realized that he didn't quite understand, so he wasn't willing to listen. She had never been interested in such things. When they were eating, He Yao texted her again, asking about Su Rong and Ming Chu. Xiao Jin only left a message, don't disturb me. It was enough that He Yao understood. Su Rong and Ming Chu only had a dozen days left. There was no need to do anything else. This was her choice. When Xiao Jin looked at the time, she suddenly heard Xiao Fei's voice. Jin, there are guests here. Why do you keep looking at your phone? You can play with your phone after dinner. She looked up and saw Xiao Fei winking at her. At least Song Yanqing was here now. She couldn't be so rude. Xiao Jin paused and put her phone aside. Song Yanqing immediately smiled and said, it's okay. She doesn't understand what we're talking about. It's natural that she doesn't like to listen. This explanation made Xiao Fei think that Song Yanqing was Xiao Jin's family. Chapter 294. Muzillion couldn't help but feel melancholy at the situation. Someone who had a powerful backer was indeed different. He even treated her differently. Now, it was obvious that whoever offended Xiao Jin would have to think twice. The person behind him wasn't an ordinary person. After the meal, the first visit to the Mu family came to an end. No matter how warm and polite they were too embarrassed to ask Song Yanqing to stay and rest. Mu Zhenming and Xiao Fei sent him to the door, but Xiao Jin didn't send him off. She only stood by the window and watched Song Yanqing leave. When she got into the car, she saw Song Yanqing raise his head. When he saw her standing by the window, a gentle smile appeared on his face. This smile really gave people the feeling of flowers blooming in spring. Xiao Jin paused for a moment as if he had bumped into the softest part of his heart. He then realized what had happened. He looked really good when he smiled. His fate had been swapped and he didn't have a happy life. Even with all these things, he still had the most gentle smile. How nice. She turned around and saw that the world was still as noisy as ever. Even Master Yao Zhu's fans were still shouting at her on Weibo. Xiao Jin smiled and sent a private message to Master Yao Zhu, speak less and you can live for 2 more days. In just a moment, Master Yao Zhu directly deleted the provocative Weibo post and quickly posted a new one. Master Yao Zhu, it's my fault for measuring the heart of a gentleman with my own yardstick. I shouldn't have slandered a real master. I'm very sorry for you to come today. You're a real master and have the ability to forgive others. This sentence almost made Yuan Wan's hair stand on end. Wasn't this what Xiao Jin said at Su Rong's house? This master fortune teller was Xiao Jin. Even if it wasn't, she actually knew this sentence. This showed how scary she was. It scared Master Yao Zhu so much that he quickly apologized. It was possible that the person who saved him at Su Rong's house was also Qiao Jin. Wasn't he courting death by rushing to his savior? Yuan Yuan was extremely regretful now. Could it be that she recommended Su Rong to Qiao Jin and Qiao Jin went over to settle this matter? But she remembered that Qiao Jin lived there, so who was Qiao Jin? Yuan Yuan then realized that she didn't know who this girl was. She found someone to investigate this girl's information, but there were no leads. Following her Weibo post, not only her fans, but her peers as well. A real master. He's a real master. You admit defeat. This isn't like you. What happened? Didn't you say you were going to deal with offline matters? Why did you suddenly, Yuan Yuan replied one by one with a straight face, don't ask. If you ask, it's a super awesome master. If you want to get your fortune told, hurry up and go. 1,000 yuan is a drop in the bucket. Of course, it wasn't that she didn't suffer any losses. Some fans were skeptical, and some felt that 1,000 yuan was too expensive. They thought that Yuan Yuan was collaborating with the other party to make her reveal the truth. They wondered if something had happened to make Yuan Yuan admit defeat. Yuan Yuan didn't dare to say that Su Rong's was too scary. It was beyond her understanding. This bunch of ignorant people. Wasn't it good to be an ordinary person? It was just a Weibo post. There were no new fans, and she even lost some fans. Yuan Yuan didn't feel that it was a loss. She had undoubtedly come into contact with the other side of the world and was even saved by someone. Her knowledge had been broadened, and she knew that there was always someone better out there. One had to keep a low profile. Acting cool would get you struck by lightning sooner or later. Chapter 295. However, Yuan Yuan's situation was not without benefits. Just as Qiao Jin had predicted, she was on fire. This fire was small, but as more and more people came to her for fortune-telling, those who got their fortune told would definitely recommend her to others. In just a few days, Qiao Jin's fans had increased to 100,000. Everyone on Weibo was saying that the master was like a god. The anti-fans had been taught a lesson beforehand and spoke in a sarcastic manner, but they did not dare to say anything. If they questioned her, a large group of fans would surround and attack her to protect her dignity. After she became famous, she did not need any more explanation. Of course, because fortune-telling was expensive, only a small number of people could afford it. Moreover, she only accepted things that she really wanted to know. Things like winning the lottery or when she would become rich, she rejected them immediately. Furthermore, there were murderers who came to her for fortune-telling and asked if she could escape the punishment of the law. Between her reputation and a friendly society, Qiao Jin chose the latter. She called the police and got the police to punish the culprit. The culprit was then locked up. Even if he wanted to scold Qiao Jin, he did not have the chance. Of course, with her accurate fortune-telling, it was impossible not to attract attention. In a few days, she was targeted by the spirit group. If there was trouble in real life, there would definitely be trouble online. There were many people like this who would show off on the internet once they had the ability. However, Qiao Jin was a genuine fortune-teller. She had investigated those who had gone through fortune-telling before. Although it was a trivial matter, she had basically achieved a 100% accuracy rate after testing. The spirit group instantly concluded that the other party must have a prophetic ability. However, when it came to finding information, there were all kinds of problems and situations. In short, they could not find any information about Qiao Jin's identity. This instantly made the spirit group feel that something was wrong. When Hua Yanming and Chao Yikai saw the members of the spirit group complaining in the group, they suddenly felt a familiar aura, when they were investigating Xiao Jin, there was also a problem. In the end, they only found information about Xiao Jin from real life. The exploded computer was still in the warehouse, witnessing history. They had also read about this famous master online. Was he really that awesome? Of course, it wasn't up to them to decide whether he was awesome or not. Those who had done fortune-telling had already confirmed it. Later on, there were too many fortune-tellers, so Xiao Jin set a limit to only receive 10 customers a day. This made the fans even more dumbfounded. If she wanted to earn money, she could only earn 10,000 yuan a day at most. The key was that her calculations were super accurate and no one could doubt her. Setting a quota limit was too much. The first 10 people to place their orders every day would get their fortunes told, while the rest would have to wait until the next day. The highest number of orders was the normal 1,000 yuan. Other price packages were too expensive, so no one ordered them for the time being. Xiao Jin didn't care about these things. It was the last few days before the summer vacation. She went to school and did some fortune-telling. There was nothing else to do. Everything seemed to exude a peaceful aura. The Feng family's side was still causing trouble. Who knew how long they could endure? When the final exam came, Xiao Jin took the exam in school and took a plane to another city. Her sudden departure was hidden from everyone. The spirit group monitoring her dropped the chain again. No one knew that she went to another city. She simply called home and said that she would be back the next day. She was just taking a break before the summer vacation. Xiao Fei thought about her character of doing what she said and became even more worried. Why was she still in her rebellious period? Chapter 296. This was just a small city. It was the place where Su Rong was born. She grew up here and had many painful memories, but also many beautiful memories. When she arrived in this city, she found a remote place and set up a formation. The light and shadow in front of her became chaotic, as if there was a space-time turbulence. All the scenery began to distort. After a few seconds, everything returned to normal. However, the scenery in front of her was completely different from where she was just standing. She was standing on an asphalt road, surrounded by a dense forest. In front of her was a wide river. Sunlight poured down, illuminating the river and making it sparkle. Su Rong and Ming Chu snuggled up to each other and sat on the riverbank. Xiao Jin stood behind them, quietly watching this scene. She was holding the umbrella that Su Rong gave her. There was no one around, and everything was very quiet. There were only the sounds of unknown insects and the occasional bird call. Su Rong leaned on Ming Chu's shoulder, and both of them had a faint smile on their faces. Su Rong whispered to Ming Chu, "Ming Chu, do you know? My home is on the other side of this river. Although it's very remote and very poor, I spent a very happy time here when I was young." Ming Chu said gently, "I know, Rong Rong." Su Rong looked at the setting sun and couldn't help but sigh. "Look, the scenery here is so beautiful. Even when the sun sets, it's still so beautiful. To be able to see such beautiful scenery and meet you in this world is really the happiest thing for me." Ming Chu nodded gently. "Me too." Su Rong's face bloomed with a bright smile. The setting sun fell on her ordinary face, but at this moment, she seemed to be stunningly beautiful. She looked at the other side of the river, and tears fell drop by drop, but her expression was always happy. "Ming Chu, we will meet again in the next life, right?" Ming Chu, "Yes, we will meet again." Su Rong, "I just want to be able to be with you for the first time in the next life, even if I don't have any memories. Even if we don't meet again, I am already very happy to be with you in this life. No one will be happier than me, I know." The sun seemed to be setting, and Su Rong felt the power in her body disappearing bit by bit. The river surged endlessly, and every drop of water seemed to never tire. They ran forward, and there was always an end. Her voice gradually weakened. Ming Chu, I love you. How I wish that I could have met you earlier. From the moment I was born, she held Ming Chu's hand tightly. Ming Chu looked at the setting sun, still as calm as ever. Until the woman fell weakly on his shoulder. At that moment, Xiao Jin felt a special vibration. She saw Su Rong and Ming Chu's bodies gradually dissipating. The orange sunset gradually disappeared into the horizon. Darkness was about to descend. Their bodies turned into transparent energy, like countless flashing butterflies, flapping their wings and rushing toward Xiao Jin. She opened the umbrella, and countless fluttering butterflies emitted a moving radiance in the dark sky. They only circled in the sky for a moment before surging toward the umbrella. Finally, they surged into the umbrella. At that moment, even the flying cranes in the umbrella seemed to come alive. They seemed to be fluctuating, but after a moment, they returned to calmness. The girl closed the umbrella and said softly in their direction, "Thank you." Chapter 297. Xiao Jin used an array to set up a monument by the river. Su Rong and Ming Chu's names were engraved on the monument. She stayed in the city for a night and returned to the capital the next day. However, she received a phone call. It was from the property manager of the old house where Su Rong lived. He said that Su Rong had left something for Xiao Jin. She went over to take the thing. It was a notarized will. Su Rong left her house to Xiao Jin. She didn't choose Ming Chu's parents. Xiao Jin was actually a little puzzled. She had never helped Su Rong, but Su Rong had made a huge contribution to her. If she wanted to calculate karma, perhaps she owed Su Rong something that was difficult to repay. The pure spiritual reader that only existed in legends had taken the initiative to leave the spiritual seed to her. Now, she even left her a house. This was not something that the demonized spiritual seed could compare to. She could even use this to begin to offset the backlash on her body. However, it was not worth it. This kind of faint emotion only lasted for a moment. She held the house and felt a little funny for a moment. She didn't have much use for the house, but it was left by Su Rong. She could sell her own house and only keep Su Rong's house. She didn't intend to touch anything in it. She took this thing home and was bumped into by Xiao Fei. "Why did you go to Lu City yesterday? Girls are running around alone now. You don't even tell your mother." She noticed the thing in Xiao Jin's hand and was a little curious. "What are you holding?" Xiao Jin pursed her lips. "The house I bought. Someone passed away downstairs. They left the house to me." Xiao Fei. She was shocked. They passed away. How could they leave the house to you?" "Oh my God, Jean, you didn't move there for someone else's inheritance, did you?" Xiao Jin, she felt funny. "You think too much. It's just because of an accident." She tilted her head and thought for a moment. "Then let's keep the house. It's not good to sell it to others. I don't plan to touch the things inside." Xiao Fei was still in a daze. She had no idea how Xiao Jin could bring back a house in just half a month. Xiao Jin said casually, "Why don't you sell my house? I will return the money to Zhenming. I raised the price when I sold it. You bought new appliances." Xiao Fei, what kind of business genius was this? Not only did he not spend any money, but he also got a property for free. Although it was located in a remote area, it was still worth a few million. No, who was the one who passed away? Xiao Jin couldn't do something he shouldn't do. Xiao Fei hurriedly pulled Xiao Jin to ask. Unfortunately, Xiao Jin didn't want to answer. He simply explained that a friend had passed away and left it to her. She wasn't going to make up any excuses. Su Rong and Ming Chu died naturally. The excuse of suicide was too casual. She also told He Yao that Su Rong had passed away. Ming Chu had disappeared too. He Yao didn't ask anything. She vaguely knew that since Xiao Jin didn't say anything, there must be something else. However, they had to give an explanation to the shocked Ming family. They could only make up an excuse that the two of them had committed suicide. The two elders of the Ming family didn't have much of a reaction, even if their son was dead. As early as when Ming Chu insisted on marrying Su Rong, their hearts had already faded. However, He Yao told Xiao Jin that Ming Chu's family asked about the old house left by Su Rong's parents. Chapter 298. She saw from the file that the house was transferred to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin was not the kind of person who would do this for the house. There must be something else. Xiao Jin did not intend to touch Su Rong's house, but he was not so kind. His son and daughter-in-law committed suicide, but the first thing he cared about was the house. Only she knew the truth about the suicide. To others, it was suicide. No wonder Su Rong chose to die. To her, her husband's parents were just strangers. All the warmth she received in the world came from Ming Chu, because Ming Chu understood the beauty of the world. She could not live anymore when they were gone. Xiao Jin did not care if they knew about the house. Even if they knew, the house had been given to him. They could not do anything about it. Even if they wanted to make trouble, Xiao Jin knew that He Yao would never let them do it in front of her. As long as Xiao Jin did not say anything. After dealing with this matter, Xiao Jin prepared for the trip abroad. Because they would gather at the airport, Xiao Fei helped Xiao Jin prepare all the luggage the night before they left. The school helped them with the visa when they registered. Xiao Fei was very worried about Xiao Jin's first trip abroad. You must follow your two brothers when you go abroad. Xiao Fei reminded her worriedly, just follow the school and your brother. Don't get lost. After all, this is not China. You are not familiar with the place. What if you get lost and don't know how to report it to the police? Xiao Jin was a little amused. Fei, do you think I am a child? Xiao Fei smiled a little embarrassedly. Of course I know you are not a child. But going abroad is different. Mom is just worried. Xiao Jin, don't worry. I will come back safely. Do you have anything you like? I will bring it back for you from abroad. Xiao Fei, no, it is so convenient now. Mom can ask someone to bring her anything she likes. You can have fun. After all, it was Xiao Jin's first time going abroad. Xiao Fei definitely wanted her to have a good time. She simply packed a few sets of clothes. Everything else was arranged by the school, so she didn't have to worry too much. However, Xiao Fei was still worried about Xiao Jin, so he talked about it with Mu Zhenming at night. Mu Zhenming said, he has to go abroad to broaden his horizons. When the child grows up, there will be schools to look after him. You don't have to worry so much. Qi Ji is also abroad. When the time comes, I will ask him to look after Xiao Jin. Xiao Fei sighed, Xiao Jin is a girl after all. Mu Zhenming, I think she's more independent than you think. Xiao Fei suddenly said sadly, in my heart, she will always be a child. Mu Zhenming, all right, this matter can't be explained clearly. Early the next morning, Xiao Jin woke up and took a car to the airport with Musichu and his brother. It wasn't their first time going abroad. Although they weren't interested in this activity, it was still a little refreshing to accompany Xiao Jin. In the car, Muzillian even teased Xiao Jin, it's your first time going abroad. You don't know what it's like abroad, right? Don't run around. Xiao Jin used to stay in a small place in Hui City. This was her first time going abroad. He was probably afraid that she would make a fool of herself. Xiao Jin only pursed her lips and smiled faintly. She still had the umbrella in her hand. Other than holding the umbrella, she didn't even carry her bag. This naturally attracted Musilian's attention. Why did you bring an umbrella? If it rains, you can buy one overseas. Chapter 299. The design of the umbrella was simple, but it looked beautiful. Musilian only thought that she had bought it somewhere as a souvenir. Xiao Jin, I like it. Musilian, that was weird. Musichu also said coldly, Musilian, you don't have to say so much. Musilian felt like he was being targeted. No, I was just saying. Besides, it's very strange for her to take an umbrella overseas, okay? She could have put it in her suitcase, but she had to bring it with her. Musichu, you can pretend that you didn't see it. Musilian, fuck. He was too talkative. Then, they met up with the rest of the group at the airport. There were many people from the school going this time, but it was impossible for the same flight to be so coincidental, so they set off in batches. Xiao Jin happened to be in the same group as the Zhong siblings. There were about 10 people in their group. Other than these few, the rest were ordinary students. Ordinary here, of course, referred to those with average family backgrounds and good grades. For this event, they couldn't be missed. Xiao Jin and the rest were all famous people in the event group, so naturally, they were the center of attention. This group of students was especially curious about why these people were here. They were clearly a group of rich young masters and young ladies who didn't lack money. Some people even complained secretly. If it weren't for them, my friend wouldn't be unable to come. Seriously, they are so rich, but they still snatch other people's places to go overseas. Can't they afford to go overseas? So stingy. Yes, we originally agreed to go shopping on Celebrity Avenue, but because of them, my friend can't come. Have you forgotten that this event is based on the ranking of results? In other words, if your results weren't as good as others, you couldn't blame others. Not all college students of this era had normal values. Xiao Jin heard those whispers, but she didn't think much of it. She glanced at a girl in ordinary clothes. That girl was wearing a pure white cotton shirt and jeans. Judging from the color and style, it was a little old, probably washed too many times. From this, it could be seen that the other party's economic conditions were ordinary. Because even her figure exuded a sense of inferiority and extreme lack of confidence. She was surrounded by several boys and girls. They were the group of people who had complained earlier. When their eyes swept over her, there was a faint sense of dominance. She hugged her backpack and tightened her body. It was a defensive and nervous posture. She was fearful of her surroundings. Xiao Jin retracted her gaze. Musichu had already helped her change her boarding pass and pushed her suitcase to line up for check-in. Because the tickets were bought by the school, they were all in economy class this time. This was a brand new experience for the two young masters. Zhongli Shiyu and Zhongli Peining were also queuing up. Zhongli Peining was honest, but Zhongli Shiyu was a little impatient. Why can't we buy first class? The pampered young master had never experienced the taste of economy class before. Zhongli Peining comfortingly pulled her brother's wrist. It's okay. It's just a dozen hours. It'll be over soon. She could suffer losses, but her brother couldn't. Zhongli Shiyu glanced at Xiao Jin. If it weren't for following Xiao Jin, they wouldn't have realized that the school was buying economy class when they signed up. If they had known earlier, they would have bought first class separately. Chapter 300. Zhongli Shiyu complained, and Muzilian also complained. Why can't we buy first-class tickets alone? Musichu, isn't it good to get along with everyone? Don't make it special. It will be very difficult for your school. Qiao Jin, Chi Chu is right. The school will do whatever it wants. How can we make it special? Qi Lian, you are really insensible. Muzilian. Big sister, if it weren't for you, they wouldn't be here at all, okay? Muzilian looked at Qiao Jin with a bit of a breakdown. You haven't said why you signed up for the activity. I haven't asked you yet, but you are blaming me. Qiao Jin looked at him strangely. I didn't ask you to come with me. Why don't you go back now? Anyway, it's not time yet. You can choose not to go. Muzilian, he wanted to do so, but if he turned back now, his brother, this beast, would definitely complain. If his parents knew that he didn't accompany Qiao Jin abroad, he would die very elegantly. He could only glare at Qiao Jin hatefully. Troublemaker. After checking in the luggage, Qiao Jin only brought the umbrella in his hand. Musichu turned his head and asked him, do you want to check in the umbrella too? Qiao Jin shook his head. Musichu didn't force him. Muzilian spoke again. It's a hindrance to take an umbrella. He still said that he wasn't a troublemaker. Qiao Jin didn't say a word. People came and went at the airport. Many people were stunned when they saw Qiao Jin. Muzilian and Musichu didn't look bad either. There was even a lot of bold girls who came up to the two brothers and directly asked for their WeChat and phone numbers. Of course, Musichu wouldn't give it to them. On the contrary, Muzilian, this playboy, gave a few numbers. When the girl left, he even blew a kiss to others. Musichu said coldly, those who do too many bad things will eventually suffer retribution. Muzilian, what are you talking about? Isn't it normal for girls to ask for my phone number? How can I watch a beauty leave so sadly? Do you think I'm you? What a cold-blooded, heartless bachelor. Due to their different personalities, Musichu had never been in a relationship. Musichu only sneered. Some of the two of them asked for a phone number, and Zhongli Shiyu also had one. On the other hand, no boy dared to come forward and ask for a phone number as beautiful as Qiao Jin. It was probably because he saw Muzilian and Musichu surrounding her. When the students at the back of the queue saw this, someone started complaining again. So what if you're handsome? It was indeed amazing to be handsome. Her grades were good and she was rich. Who wouldn't take a few more glances at her? After everything was done, they went through the security check together. This time, there were two school teachers leading the team, and one of them was even a director. The activities abroad were to participate in cultural activities and travel, meet the students and teachers of foreign famous schools, listen to the lessons of foreign famous teachers, and have a meal together. It was also equivalent to an additional activity. It was prepared for the students with good grades. Who knew that Qiao Jin and the others would sign up this time? Because they came on time, they didn't have to wait long before they heard the announcement of boarding. The three of them didn't sit together. When the school bought the tickets, it wasn't so coincidental. Other than a few people who could sit nearby, the others were separated. Zhongli Shiyu became the closest to Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin sat in the second of the 4 seats in the middle. Zhongli Shiyu sat in the 3 seats on her right. Musichu's first reaction was to find the passenger next to Qiao Jin to change seats. Chapter 301. The passenger next to Qiao Jin was a man with a big belly and a big waist. He looked to be in his 30s. He was dressed in gold and silver and looked a little fierce. When he saw Qiao Jin sitting next to him, his eyes lit up. Musichu came forward and asked him politely, "Hello, brother. My sister and I are together, but our tickets are different. "Can we change seats?" As long as the guest agreed, the seats in the economy class could be changed. However, the man didn't appreciate it. "Why should we change? I'm used to this seat." Musillian couldn't help but complain, "What's so good about the edge seats? Do you like the aisle?" The man immediately revealed a fierce expression. "What does it have to do with you? If you're so arrogant, why don't you take first class?" Before Musillian could curse, he was stopped by Musichu. On Xiao Jin's left was a woman carrying a child. She looked at them and was a little surprised, but she didn't dare to cause trouble. The child was sleeping. Musichu and the others walked to their seats and asked if they could change seats. However, the young man sitting next to them was a little scared when he saw the big man and subconsciously shook his head and refused. Xiao Jin sat in her seat with a calm expression. It was just that the economy class was narrow. The model of this plane was relatively old, unlike many large international flights. They could only say that they were unlucky. The seat wasn't that big. When the man sat down, his body was already big and muscular. When he leaned to the side, it was as if he was leaning against Xiao Jin's armrest, taking up all of her space. Now that they were close, she could even smell the disgusting oily smell of the man. It was really oily. How many days had it been since he washed his hair? Xiao Jin frowned. She couldn't lean to the side. Next to her was a woman carrying a child. It would be easy to squeeze others. Musichu also noticed Xiao Jin's predicament, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Just then, a timid voice came from behind Xiao Jin. "Xiao Jin, do you want to switch seats with me? I'm by the window." Xiao Jin turned around and saw that it was the girl who was dressed in ordinary clothes and had low self-esteem. She looked at Xiao Jin with some hesitation. Xiao Jin shook his head and smiled. "It's okay. I'll sit here. You can go sit." The girl hesitantly glanced at the man next to him and could only return to her seat. "I told you to pretend to be a good person. Duan Rian, why are you so shameless?" When she passed by the seats of her classmates, a male classmate gave her a disgusted look. Her body trembled, and the male classmate reached out to grab her arm and said in a low voice, "Don't get close to people you can't afford to offend." Duan Rian's body trembled even faster. When the other passengers looked at him strangely, the boy did not dare to cause trouble and quickly let go of her. Duan Rian returned to her seat as if she was escaping. Fortunately, when the teacher came up, he noticed Xiao Jin's predicament. Musichu also whispered something to the teacher. The male teacher walked over and switched seats with Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin agreed this time. The fierce-looking man saw this scene and did not know what to say. He could only watch as Xiao Jin left from the other side with a regretful expression. It was rare to see such a beautiful and classy girl. What a pity. Bastard who ruined his plans. He glared fiercely at the male teacher. Chapter 302. Xiao Jin swapped seats, and the male teacher happened to sit in front of Duan Rian. When she saw Xiao Jin coming over, Duan Rian was a little surprised. The stewardess came over to greet all the passengers. When they noticed Xiao Jin, they were a little surprised, and their smiles became even more charming. The plane began to take off. Two young girls were sitting next to Xiao Jin. Although they were surprised by Xiao Jin's beauty, they were too embarrassed to talk. After the plane began to take off, they took out their tablets to watch TV. They wore headphones and had their own entertainment. The flight time of more than 10 hours was boring. Musillian and Musichu were already prepared for this. They asked Xiao Jin to download some TV dramas and watch them by herself, so that she would not be too bored. Sometimes she would feel Duan Rian's gaze, but before that, they did not know each other. After an unknown period of time, the child suddenly cried. Then came the sound of the woman coaxing the child awkwardly. Actually, the child stopped crying after a few cries. Xiao Jin noticed that the child was the child of the woman who had been sitting next to her. However, before the child could cry, a fierce voice rang out, crying, 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 "Where's your mother? Isn't it annoying to cry? Why did you bring the little boy on the plane if he wanted to cry? Aren't you embarrassed to disturb others' sleep? Fuck." His words were louder than the child's cries. It was so loud that half of the passengers who were gradually falling asleep on the plane woke up. The stewardess heard the noise and hurried over. The child actually stopped crying, but he was frightened by this sentence again and began to cry. Then, there was the woman's awkward apology and coaxing voice. There was another earth-shattering scolding. A passenger complained, the child didn't cry much. He only cried twice. You're shouting louder than him. You're disturbing others' sleep. The fierce-looking man immediately scolded, what does it have to do with you? Son of a bitch. His filthy mouth immediately scared the passenger who was speaking, and he didn't dare to open his mouth again. Of course, the stewardess quickly advised them that nothing could happen on the plane. Otherwise, they would have to make an emergency landing. The troublemakers would also be detained. Probably thinking of this, the man didn't dare to do anything. After cursing a few times, he unbuckled his seatbelt and prepared to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was at the back, and he had to walk past Xiao Jin when he walked through the corridor. When he saw Xiao Jin, his eyes lit up. When he walked over, he pretended to be unsteady, and his huge body fell on Xiao Jin. If he fell down, his waist would hit Xiao Jin's face. That scene could not be described as just disgusting. However, just as he was about to fall, he suddenly felt an inexplicably powerful force pushing him from behind. He staggered a few steps, as if he really did lose his footing, and directly fell down, landing on the corridor. Boom! If it wasn't for the fat on his back, he probably would have fallen hard. This gave the stewardess a huge fright. The passengers were dumbfounded at first, then some of them couldn't help but smile. Serves you right. The man stood up in shock and anger. Which one of you pushed me? However, when he looked back, the corridor he walked through was empty. The passengers on both sides were sitting just right. The stewardess came from the other side. It was impossible for anyone to stand up and push him so quickly. He was nearly 200 pounds. It was not easy to push him. He was shocked and angry when he couldn't find the culprit. On the way back, everyone looked like the culprit. He looked even fiercer. He didn't suspect the people around Xiao Jin. After all, they were all in his sight. Who could push him? Chapter 303. The 10-hour-long flight was quite fast. There was no trouble in the second half of the flight, so she had a good night's sleep. When she got off the plane, it was drizzling in America. The moist air entered her nose. The air in this foreign country was no different from the air in China. She took the umbrella and got off the plane. Muzillion and Musichu followed her. Muzillion looked at the man in the distance. He saw that the man was staring at Xiao Jin. His lecherous eyes were exposed. Muzillion scolded fiercely, "If you look at me again, I'll dig your eyeballs out." He couldn't hold it in on the plane. Now that he got off the plane, he had nothing to worry about. Of course, he scolded him. The man glared at Muzillion. He seemed like he wanted to scold him back. However, when he saw Musichu and the others standing together, he was scared and could only leave. Muzillion spat, "What a disgusting thing. Brother, let me tell you. Next time, no matter what, you must take the first-class cabin. Not everyone was like that, but it was still disgusting to meet such a weirdo. Mizuchu didn't object this time. Xiao Jin looked at the man's back as he left, and only smiled. The male teacher announced for them to gather. It was daytime when they arrived here. However, they had been on the plane for more than 10 hours. What they needed now was rest. The hotel had been booked. They just needed to go to the hotel. The bus was already waiting outside. The school had arranged everything very well. They went to collect their luggage and got on the bus. The bus was very empty. Muzillion and Mizuchu sat together. Xiao Jin sat in front of them. No one dared to sit beside Xiao Jin. Someone whispered, "Why is she always holding that umbrella?" "I don't know. She likes it, maybe there's something wrong with her." Really, they spoke very softly, not daring to let Xiao Jin and Mizuchu hear them. Xiao Jin heard it, but she did not respond. He just looked at the light rain outside the window. Duan Ruyan's gaze lingered on Xiao Jin. This timid girl was sitting in the corner. They looked at Xiao Jin with envy and hope. What a luminous being she was in the light. When they arrived at the hotel, Muzillion couldn't hold it in anymore. He often came overseas to play. Coincidentally, Mu Chiji was also working in a company in the US. Moreover, they were in the same city. Muzillion directly told the teacher that they would bring their sister to look for Big Brother, and the teacher agreed. But when he told Xiao Jin about it, Xiao Jin didn't agree. She said lightly, "I'm not in a hurry to see Chiji, I want to rest first." Muzillion's eyes widened. "Didn't you sleep for more than 10 hours on the plane?" He had noticed that Xiao Jin didn't wake up much the entire time. To be able to sleep for more than 10 hours in such an environment, Xiao Jin was really impressive. Xiao Jin said, "I'm just very tired. I want to rest." Since she said so, Muzillion naturally couldn't force her. However, he didn't like to stay in the hotel. Moreover, the room was too small. He asked the front desk to change to a bigger room. The teachers turned a blind eye and couldn't be bothered. As long as she was there, it was fine. Xiao Jin didn't change. Mizuchu saw that Xiao Jin didn't go over and hesitated for a moment. After confirming that Xiao Jin would stay in the hotel and not go anywhere, he went to look for Mu Chiji with Muzillion. Chapter 304. The hotel room had 2 single beds for 2 people. She was assigned to the same room as Duan Ruyan. Duan Ruyan was a little excited when she heard the teacher let her stay in the same room as Xiao Jin, but the other students were in disbelief. One of them even blurted out, "Teacher, isn't this inappropriate?" Before the teacher could speak, Xiao Jin said coldly, "I think it's appropriate." No one dared to say anything when she spoke. Although Xiao Jin's matter had caused a stir in the school, everyone now knew that she was Muzillion's sister. In other words, she was the daughter of the Mu family. They did not dare to provoke her. Zhongli Shiyu and Zhongli Peining also separated. However, they were also rich and willful. They went to the hotel and changed to a high-end suite. They did not want to stay in the same room as other students. When they returned to the room, Duan Ruyan pushed her suitcase in. When she saw Xiao Jin, she could not help but feel ashamed. She said softly, "Xiao Jin, if you need any help, just let me know." "Let me know." Xiao Jin seemed to be surprised by this word. He turned to look at her and said, "What do I need to tell you? Shouldn't you be helping me?" Duan Ruyan's face stiffened. She said that because she was used to it. She was ordered around by those people. Every time they wanted her to do something, they just ordered her to do it. The help that Xiao Jin said did not exist. However, she was too embarrassed to say it. This had nothing to do with Xiao Jin. She could only hide her grievances in the bottom of her heart. No one else needed to know. Xiao Jin retracted his gaze and said, "I don't need your help." "Student Duan, is this your first time in the United States?" Duan Ruyan nodded embarrassedly and said, "Yes." This was her first time going abroad. She studied hard and finally got the chance to go to school. Fortunately, she applied for it. Unlike most of the other students, she did not have an excellent family background. She could only rely on her own efforts. Other than this, she did not have any other merits worth mentioning. Duan Ruyan put down her suitcase and looked at Xiao Jin carefully. This was the most beautiful girl she had ever seen. The tip of her eyebrows and the corners of her eyes exuded a smoky temperament. She really looked like a fairy who lived in the heavenly palace. Even talking to him felt like blasphemy. Wasn't this blasphemy? For someone like her, it was a great honor to be able to speak with Xiao Mu. Xiao Jin stayed in the room for a while. Then, he took out the tablet and looked at it. Duan Ruyan thought that Xiao Jin was studying, so she didn't dare to make a sound when she was busy. She was afraid that she would disturb Xiao Jin. In fact, Xiao Jin was looking for local tourism information in America to gain some knowledge. She basically had no pressure when it came to language. At this moment, Xiao Jin noticed that Duan Ruyan had taken out her old smartphone. Her face stiffened for a moment as if she had seen something. When she subconsciously raised her head to look at Xiao Jin had already retracted his gaze. "Student Xiao, I'm going out for a while," Duan Ruyan whispered to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin nodded, and Duan Ruyan tiptoed out of the room. After she left, Xiao Jin put down the tablet and followed her out. When she went out, she tilted her head and glanced at the wall. A devil's face appeared on the wall. It looked at her and was still as ferocious as ever. Chapter 305. When Duan Ruyan arrived downstairs, there were already 3 men and a woman waiting in the hotel lobby. The woman had an average height and a medium figure. Her skin was fair, and she was wearing exquisite makeup. The other 3 men each had their own characteristics, but they were not very eye-catching in the team led by Muzilian and Muzichu. One of the men had been in contact with Duan Ruyan on the plane. When the woman saw Duan Ruyan, who was late, she waited until Duan Ruyan came closer before she scolded in a low voice, "We've been waiting for you for so long. What were you doing upstairs? Do you really think you're a phoenix just because you're in the same room as the Mu family? A chicken is a chicken. Do you really think you can fly to the top? She only thinks highly of you because she thinks you're above everyone else. Do you really think that someone like her would take a fancy to you?" A series of harsh words pierced Duan Ruyan's heart, but she just blinked and replied timidly, "I was waiting for the elevator for a long time." "I'm sorry, Miss Yao." Yao Hongyin glared at her bitterly. Although she was scolding her, she secretly hated that she had not been assigned to the same room as Xiao Jin. Otherwise, she would have been the one living with Xiao Jin. If she had a good relationship with them, she would not have to worry about not being able to enter the Mu brothers' social circle. After a long time, everyone knew the relationship between the Muzilian brothers and Xiao Jin. Of course, judging from their attitude, even if Xiao Jin was not the biological daughter of the Mu family, she was better than their biological daughter. These people could not tolerate looking down on her. Of course, not everyone in a key university had such qualities and thoughts, but the difference in environment was too big. They were also geniuses who had been admitted to other universities, but their mentality gradually became distorted as they compared with each other. Their families were not poor, but they were well off. They thought they could have a better life, but they did not expect the students here to have such a big family. Some people worked hard, and some people were willing to fall. Duan Ruyan could be said to be from the poorest family, so of course, she became the target of their bullying. When the other boys saw that there were foreigners staring at them, they realized that the cultures of the two countries were different. Afraid of causing misunderstandings, they said to Yao Hongyin, "Well, Hongyin, don't waste time with her. It's almost time for our appointment with Peter. Don't be late for the first time and leave a bad impression on him." Yao Hongyin nodded. Okay. When Duan Ro Yen heard them talking about Peter, who she had never heard of before, she was confused and scared. "What are you talking about? Where are we going? Have you told the teacher?" "Of course I told the teacher." Yao Hongyin reached out and grabbed Duan Ruyan's arm. She was strong and grabbed Duan Ruyan like she was holding a chick. "It's none of your business where we're going." This time, it was different from the past. They were abroad. If anything happened, Duan Ruyan might not even have time to contact the teacher. She instinctively felt scared and shook her head desperately. "I still have some homework to do." "You've already told the teacher that I don't have the teacher's permission. Why don't we just forget about it?" "Of course we've told the teacher that you have to go too." The other three men also pushed Duan Ruyan. Duan Ruyan was no match for them, so she could only be half forced out of the hotel lobby. After they left, Qiao Jin's figure slowly appeared behind her. Chapter 306. The summer in the United States was the same as in China. The humid heat wave hit the hotel surroundings. The air conditioner in the hotel was on, so it did not feel so much. Qiao Jin was wearing a white shirt, slender jeans, and a pair of limited white sneakers. She looked fresh and elegant. Her waist-length seaweed hair made people feel that she was a siren from the sea, which attracted the attention of many foreigners. The aesthetics between the two countries were not very similar, but looking at Qiao Jin, there was a particularly comfortable beauty and temperament. At least foreigners would not think of her as ugly. She was probably a legendary Oriental beauty. She was indeed extraordinary. Most of her daily clothes were arranged by Qiao Fei. Her aesthetics were good, so she never made a mistake when matching Qiao Jin. Of course, she looked good, and the sack was not easy to make mistakes. She watched Duan Ruyan being pulled away by Yao Hongyin and the others. Her face was full of reluctance. The surrounding walls surged with layers of black air, extending out from the hotel. Except for her, no one else could see such a situation. Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu were eating delicacies alone in the hotel lobby. When they caught a glimpse of Qiao Jin, they immediately became alert. Their mission was to monitor Qiao Jin. Now that Qiao Jin had made a move, of course, they had to pay special attention. They saw Qiao Jin step out of the hotel alone. The two siblings looked at each other. After leaving a tip, they got up and prepared to follow Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin came out of the hotel and saw a Bentley slowly driving over. It was not surprising to see such a luxurious car in this area. The surprising thing was the person inside. In the car, Audan was in disbelief. "Young master, do you think Miss Qiao won't suspect anything if we deliberately stay in this hotel? What does she need to suspect?" The man in the car had a perfect and intoxicating smile on his face. When he saw the familiar figure outside the hotel, the gentleness in his eyes gradually increased. "She knows that I will come to find her, from the perspective of a friend." Dan was speechless. He suddenly understood what the young master meant. Just like the famous saying of the century, "You are a good person." Right now, you're my friend, so you should have about the same level of destructive power, right? Yet, the young master was actually using this method to slowly conquer her. TSK, how terrifying. Sure enough, Qiao Jin appeared at the entrance of the hotel. Opening the car window, the man seemed to carry a clear chill, dispelling the summer heat wave, bringing a particularly fresh and intoxicating feeling. He saw Qiao Jin standing outside. It's very hot outside. You can just wait inside. Xiao Jin walked forward. I didn't purposely wait for you. When I was about to go out, I felt that you were coming. The other, Song Yanqing, was not embarrassed at all. His noble temperament remained unchanged. It seems that I'm more important. You originally planned to go out, but changed your mind when you heard that I was here. Xiao Jin thought about it and nodded. He wasn't wrong. The other, awesome. She was just a little curious about Duan Ruyan. She had predicted that her life would not be in danger. Since Song Yanqing was here, she must have come to see Song Yanqing. Why are you here? She lowered her head and asked. She opened the car door and let Song Yanqing out. In the past, this kind of work was done by Audan. When Audan saw Xiao Jin's behavior, he naturally would not be so ignorant as to say, I'll do it. If he really did that, perhaps he would not be the chief bodyguard by the young master's side tomorrow. Audan thought sadly. Chapter 307. Song Yanqing stepped out of the car, and his tall and straight body stretched out. In an instant, he was taller than Xiao Jin by a head. His graceful and powerful aura quickly attracted the attention of the pedestrians on the roadside. Everyone looked at this Asian man who suddenly appeared, and even the foreigners had a stunned expression. Beauty was really appreciated by the whole world. If there was a difference, it must be that your degree of beauty was not enough. Song Yanqing slightly lowered his eyes to look at the girl next to him and said, This time, there is a company activity and signing a contract. My father asked me to deal with it. You, sir, asked you to deal with it in the country. Oh. Xiao Jin expressed that he understood. The two siblings, who originally wanted to follow her, hid in the hotel lobby. Looking at the situation outside, it was not good to go out. Zhongli Peining saw Song Yanqing, and her eyes showed incomparable amazement. Is that the young master of the Song family? The other party was tall and straight like a pine tree, and his temperament was even better. Coupled with that peerlessly perfect face, there was really no better adjective to describe him. Zhongli Shiyu's expression was a little strange. Compared to the principle of the same sex repelling each other, he only noticed that the way Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin spoke was actually particularly intimate. Seeing his sister's infatuated look, he immediately warned, the one beside him is that woman. Not to mention Song Yanqing's identity, just that woman alone was not to be trifled with. Zhongli Peining glanced at her brother and rolled her eyes. What do you think I'm thinking? Everyone loves beauty. Have you ever seen someone as beautiful as her? Can I take a few more glances? Don't worry, I know what I'm capable of. I don't have any thoughts about this kind of immortal level man. He is especially compatible with immortals, so he and Xiao Jin are so compatible. Although Zhongli Shiyu knew that his sister did not have any thoughts that she should not have, hearing her belittle herself like this, he was still a little uncomfortable. Who said that? You're so beautiful, how do you know you're not worthy of him? Zhongli Peining asked him meaningfully, brother, compared to Xiao Jin, who is prettier? Zhongli Shiyu answered without hesitation, you're beautiful. Actually, she couldn't say whether she was beautiful or not. Xiao Jin and Zhongli Peining were totally different. Zhongli Peining was very happy. Of course I'm happy to hear that. But I know in my heart that it's not that I'm not as good as Xiao Jin, but that Xiao Jin is too rare. She looked at the two people outside and said, when I first met her, I was already thinking about how popular she would be if she entered the entertainment industry. Zhongli Shiyu, the two of them looked outside the door. At this moment, Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing were already planning to come in. She thought for a moment and said, the air conditioner is on inside. The air conditioner was turned on because it was too hot. It was just the right temperature for them, but for Song Yanqing, it was too cold. Song Yanqing chuckled. It's okay. It'll only take a few minutes to enter the room. Ah Yi, go in and help me with the accommodation procedures first. Ah Yi said, okay. Although it was said to be the accommodation procedures, it had already been arranged when they came. They only needed to take the room card. The hotel they were staying in was also a 5-star hotel. Its reputation was not too well known, but it was enough for their selection criteria. The hotel manager knew that Song Yanqing had come and planned to personally receive him. Ah Yi went to greet him and did not make a big fuss. Chapter 308. The hotel's air conditioning was indeed very cold for Song Yanqing, but his body had been slowly changing recently. He was no longer as cold as before. A few minutes later, they went upstairs together. Qiao Jin naturally followed him to his suite. Of course, he was just a guest. Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu naturally wouldn't follow. Seeing this, Zhongli Peining was particularly curious. Are they really boyfriend and girlfriend? Why does the information show that they haven't seen each other many times? Zhongli Shiyu, ever since the monitoring group lost her tracking record in the WeChat group, I don't believe that the spirit group has investigated any information about her. Zhongli Peining, upstairs, Song Yanqing asked Qiao Jin, what were you going to do just now? Qiao Jin thought for a moment and said, I saw a particularly interesting person. I just wanted to follow and see what the other party's situation was. Song Yanqing entered the room and continued to ask with slight interest, an unawakened spiritual reader? Or a demonized spiritual reader? Qiao Jin nodded. It could be. Everything you said is possible. Song Yanqing instantly understood. It could be an unawakened spiritual reader, but it could be a demonized spiritual reader. That would be useful to her, but it wouldn't be enough for her to chase after it. It seems that it's not an ordinary spiritual reader. For you to chase after it abroad, it's either being watched by the Rakshasa world, or it's an array master or a spiritual reader. He guessed correctly. Qiao Jin didn't intend to hide it. There aren't many spiritual readers. He paused and continued, it could be an array master. Duan Rian being an array master was just her speculation. Her speculation was wrong before she fully awakened. Just like when she signed up, she felt that something was useful to her. It wasn't until she saw it that she confirmed that this person was Duan Rian. However, there was still a group of people who hadn't arrived yet, so she wasn't completely sure. If Duan Rian was only one of them, then this event would give her a big surprise. Song Yanqing showed a little curiosity about not being demonized. Is there a chance to be saved when you're not demonized? There was always a process for a person to be demonized. It was not that easy for a spiritual reader to awaken. If he saved her before she was demonized, would it be possible for her to wake up and not be demonized? Qiao Jin shook her head. It's very difficult. Those who can be demonized must have been targeted for a long time. There is also an equivalent exchange. If you want to get the ability, you have to be demonized. Stronger abilities. Basically, no demonized spiritualist can resist this temptation. There was a strong incentive for this. For example, Zhao Chunfeng, who had killed Tan Shuajia and a few others, had been motivated by the desire to avenge his parents. The cracks were already riddled with holes, and the demon had infiltrated silently. Generally speaking, 99% of psionic readers who awakened with a strong desire for revenge were demonized. She thought Duan Rian was probably the same. She had been bullied too much. Not to mention that she couldn't save this situation, it wouldn't end well for her to be kind and save others. Even if she could, she had a premonition that Duan Rian would be too late. Because she was an array master, even the demon was chasing after her. This was fundamentally different from Song Yanqing. The demon followed him for a purpose, and he could see the Rakshasa realm. Duan Rian couldn't see it, but she must be gradually coming into contact with the demon. Song Yanqing seemed to be able to understand this situation. He suddenly said to Qiao Jin, "Don't interfere in other people's affairs." Chapter 309. Qiao Jin looked at him curiously. "I didn't say I was going to intervene." Song Yanqing smiled. "I know, there are some things that are useless even if you intervene. If she can be demonized and she isn't strong enough, you can save her once, but not twice." Because he had witnessed the Rakshasa realm, and his ability as a spiritual speaker was forced to awaken by the Rakshasa realm, he knew how powerful the demons of the Rakshasa realm were at seducing people. They would seep into your limbs and bones all the time, just to seduce you. Once they succeeded, they would gradually lose themselves. They might even lose their sanity. Qiao Jin could ignore him back then, so naturally, he wouldn't care about others. Qiao Jin nodded. "I understand." She had existed for 10,000 years and had witnessed countless things like this. Naturally, she wouldn't do something that was thankless. However, there were demonizations in the world, and naturally there were existences like Su Rong and Ming Chu. Thinking of Su Rong and Ming Chu, she felt a little complicated. She said, "I don't think I've told you about Su Rong and Ming Chu." "Song Yanqing, you can tell me now." Qiao Jin thought for a moment and told him about Su Rong and Ming Chu. She wasn't good at telling stories, so she just told it lightly and casually, with a kind of indifference. However, in this story, one could still feel a faint sadness. After Qiao Jin finished, Song Yanqing said, "It's very shocking." It was really surprising that her obsession could be strong enough to bring her deceased husband back. "Song Yanqing, that's why you asked me that question that day." No wonder she was in a bad mood. Song Yanqing was surprised that this kind of thing could make Qiao Jin's mood fluctuate, but he also felt an inexplicable joy. To be able to make her feel touched, it probably made her understand that there were beautiful things in this world. If she stood in a high place and treated everyone the same, she wouldn't be able to feel that kind of beauty. Qiao Jin pinched his chin. "Is Ming Chu everything to Su Rong?" "Sort of," Song Yanqing said. "Although I haven't experienced such a thing, I understand her thoughts. You said that she has no parents, and her life has not been smooth sailing since she was young. This world is only a burden to her. For the sake of living, she can't feel that there are more beautiful things in this world because just trying to survive is squeezing all her time." He explained gently, as if he was unfolding a picture of Su Rong's life. Meeting Ming Chu was the most beautiful thing in her life. Because there was someone who had brought her everything and brought her to appreciate the beauty of life. If this person was no longer around, it would be equivalent to destroying her. No one knew whether tomorrow or an accident would come first. This could only be said to be the sorrow of fate. If there were no accidents, perhaps they would live like this for the rest of their lives. Perhaps they would gradually wear each other down and quarrel. Perhaps by then, Su Rong would no longer be so stubborn. However, there were no ifs in life. Everything disappeared at the right time. This was fate. Qiao Jin shook his head and sighed silently. "She gave me an umbrella, and before she left, she gave me a gift. I don't think what I did was worth it. I don't understand her thoughts, but I will cherish them." This was the kindness of the other party, which made her feel different. She had no reason to ignore it. Song Yanqing curled the corners of his lips, like a cool breeze and bright moon. "Perhaps this is the reason she wanted you to know. She is a good person." Chapter 310. Qiao Jin nodded. "Just like you." Song Yanqing, "All right, at least in her heart, the meaning of being a good person was not ordinary. When night fell, Xiao Jin saw the Musilian brothers who had returned. Musilian saw her and said, "Big brother is very unhappy that you did not look for him when you came to America. He wants you to video call him tonight and let him see if you have become ugly." This did not sound like something Muchiji would say. Obviously, Musilian was bullshitting. Musachu shot a cold look at Musilian and said quickly, "Big brother wants you to call him." Xiao Jin nodded. "I will." Musachu asked, "Are you really not going to change rooms and sleep with others? Are you used to it?" It was not that they looked down on the students who shared a room with Xiao Jin. It was just that Xiao Jin sleeping alone was more comfortable than two people sleeping in the same room. It was not as if they did not have the means to help Xiao Jin change rooms. Xiao Jin said, "It's fine. It's just an activity. I don't want to be special." The Mu brothers who were shot were speechless. Musilian saw the change in Musachu's eyes and immediately shouted, "I'm not going to share a room with others. If you want to stay, you can stay by yourself." The room was already booked. There was no reason to change back. Musachu took a deep breath and gave up on the idea. It did not matter what his sister thought. He really could not overcome the difficulty of sharing a room with others. Xiao Jin did not care about what others thought. She would not force others to agree with her. She went down to eat with them. They ate together. It was all arranged by the school. The teachers were afraid that these students would have their own ideas, so they still advised them to integrate as much as possible. Tonight, a large group of people would arrive, and tomorrow, they would go to school with them to start this study trip. Zhongli Peining and her brother didn't really want to come during dinner time. However, when they thought that Xiao Jin would also be there, they still came. Dinner was Western food. The Western food in this hotel was not bad, but it was torture for people who were not used to it. Xiao Jin ate quite well. During the meal, Ro Yen and the remaining 4 people finally came back. As expected, they were criticized by the teacher. The short-haired girl who was with Duan Ruyan could not help but smile and apologize. She told the teacher that they had been shopping for too long and lost track of time. Actually, the teacher had called and knew that they might be looking for an excuse. But now that they were back safely, it was fine. Of course, the teacher also noticed that Duan Ruyan's expression was not very good. At least when she returned, her expression was one of terror. The teacher asked with concern, "Student Duan, what's wrong with you?" They were not from the same school, and this teacher was not Duan Ruyan's teacher. He was just a teacher who led the school. He did not know Duan Ruyan well and did not know what situation she might have encountered. It was natural for him to be concerned. Yao Hongyin immediately grabbed Duan Ruyan's hand and pinched her arm to stop her from talking nonsense. Yao Hongyin explained with a smile, "It's nothing, teacher. We met with a small car accident on our way back. We were almost hit by a car. Duan Ruyan is timid, so she got scared." The other boys behind him also echoed in agreement. They were all college students, so the teacher did not think there was anything wrong. Hearing this, he said with concern, "Student Duan, in this case, do you need to rest for a while? I'll ask the hotel staff to send dinner to your room." Chapter 311. Duan Ruyan raised her head and looked at the teacher with a look of hope after the panic. However, the teacher really couldn't see the begging in the depths of her eyes. "Teacher." Yao Hongyin held her and no one else could see. She was in pain and her face twitched. "Okay. I'll go back to my room to rest." Her voice was like a mosquito. The teacher felt that she was really timid and even spoke carefully. They couldn't be blamed. It was rare to see such a thing on the campus of a key university. As for campus violence, it was difficult for the teacher to think of it. On the other side, Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu's observation skills were outstanding. Naturally, they saw something fishy. Zhongli Peining pushed her brother's arm. "Brother, don't you feel that there's something strange between the two girls?" Zhongli Shiyu also saw it, but he couldn't guess the specifics. He just frowned and said, "It's a little strange." At this moment, Qiao Jin, who was sitting at another table and eating with the Mu brothers, stood up and said softly, "Teacher, I'm Duan Ruin's roommate. I'll send her back to rest. I'm also full." The teacher's face lit up. "Oh, right, how could I forget this? Come, student Xiao, send student Duan back to rest." Yao Hongyin originally wanted to say that they could send her back so that Duan Ruyin would shut up and not say anything that shouldn't be said. She didn't expect Xiao Jin to interfere. Of course, they didn't dare to go against Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin even walked in front of them and looked down at them. "Students, you just came back. You must be hungry. Hurry up and eat." Those who didn't know would think that she was concerned about them, but Muzilian and Musichu felt that Qiao Jin was it wasn't targeted, but if Qiao Jin was concerned about others, he wouldn't be in this state. They didn't understand the situation and could only frown and look over. Of course, those students didn't dare to refuse Qiao Jin's kindness. Okay. Thank you for your concern." Yao Hongyin gritted her teeth. Seeing the disregard in Qiao Jin's eyes, she couldn't help but feel indignant. Wasn't he just lucky enough to be associated with the Mu family? What was there to be proud of? Without the Mu family, he might be picking up garbage to eat. It was said that her results were not very good when she entered the school. No one knew how much money the Mu family had given her. Now that she had suddenly joined a study tour, it was either because the Mu family had bribed her or had helped her hire a famous teacher to tutor her. That was why she had such good results. If they had such resources, wouldn't they be 1,000 times more powerful than Qiao Jin? TSK. The few of them went to eat. Qiao Jin sent Duan Ruyin, who was trembling slightly, back home. She was trembling mainly because of Yao Hongyin's pinch. The other party didn't show any mercy. Duan Ruyin's trembling slowed down the moment she climbed onto her shoulder. Qiao Jin supported her as he escorted her back. In a low voice, she said, "Qiao Jin, thank you." His voice was already choked with sobs. She had suffered quite a shock tonight, and even had a nightmare. This nightmare was about to begin, and she didn't know how to face it. She didn't expect Yao Hongyin and the others to be so crazy that they actually sent her to that kind of place, that kind of naked and undisguised gaze, a group of foreigners speaking a strange language. She was like the most embarrassing person in the world. Standing there and letting them size her up, she was just a product. And she couldn't even resist. If it weren't for the teacher's urging, she might not have been able to come back tonight. Chapter 312. When she reached the room, Duan Ruyin sat in front of her bed in shock. Qiao Jin was busy in the bathroom. After a while, she saw a folded warm towel in front of her. Duan Ruyin raised her head because she was too flustered. She saw the girl's calm eyes and delicate facial features. Her temperament was like smoke. She didn't seem to be friendly, but she didn't seem to have any other intentions. Duan Ruyin took the towel and said in a trembling voice, Thank you." Qiao Jin said, "You're welcome." Duan Ruyin wiped her face with the towel. For a moment, she wanted Qiao Jin to save her. Because she was the daughter of the Mu family. But, why? No one would help others for no reason. She might even hurt Qiao Jin. Perhaps it was because of the first time, Duan Ruyin had seen many people who seemed to have good intentions but actually had bad intentions. Perhaps Xiao Jin was the same. But there was nothing about her that caught her eye. She knew that this kind of person wouldn't do such a thing. She was not on the same level as Yao Hongyin and the others. Duan Rian was very grateful for Xiao Jin's kindness. Duan Rian didn't say it in the end. She had to face her own problems. Are you hungry? The girl's greeting was still indifferent. Her voice was steady as if there were no fluctuations. Duan Rian shook her head. She didn't have any appetite after what happened tonight. Xiao Jin pursed his lips and said, "Rest early. If you're hungry, call the hotel to send food over." Duan Rian nodded. When she lay down, she actually felt a moment of relaxation. In a foreign country, a girl she had never met actually brought her a kind of incomparable peace. Are you really willing to do this? It's too late. Look, if you don't do it now, you'll become even more miserable. You might not even be able to go back alive. Just promise me. It's such a simple thing, Hong. Duan Rian opened her eyes, sweating profusely. She was dreaming again. In the dream, she could not see the figures clearly. They were approaching her, and they always wanted her to agree to something. She didn't know what she should agree to. She would have dreams every night, and they would always be able to easily grasp her weakness. Every word they said would make her tremble in fear. The ferocious aura hidden in the darkness seemed to give her a sense of satisfaction. However, she always wakes up. She stared at the ceiling. In the dark environment, her pupils suddenly dilated. She did not move. The sensor light in the room did not light up, but she felt that there was someone beside her. A lively person. It was Xiao Jin. She tilted her head. The curtains blocked the light from the city outside, and the room was extremely dark. Actually, she couldn't see Xiao Jin's figure clearly. She knew that Xiao Jin was sleeping soundly. She had a perfect face, an immortal-like temperament, and an aristocratic family background. She was envious of everything he did. This life was so perfect that there was almost no flaw to be found. Perhaps in this world, there were always some people who were born to be in the clouds. She held her breath. The room was terrifyingly quiet. She did not hear any sound, not even the slightest sound of breathing. Her heart trembled. She wanted to hear more clearly. Suddenly, she heard a voice. "You can't sleep." It was Xiao Jin's voice. Chapter 313. The stone in her heart finally fell to the ground. Duan Rian was a little surprised and said timidly, "Student Xiao, how did you know I was awake? Did I wake you up?" Xiao Jin said, "No, I saw you moving." Duan Rian was speechless. She didn't know how Xiao Jin could see it when it was so dark. Perhaps her eyesight was naturally superior. Duan Rian was still a little short-sighted. Thinking of this, Duan Rian sighed again. How could a perfect person be perfect everywhere? I had a nightmare and just woke up. I'm sorry to disturb you. Xiao Jin didn't say anything. She knew what Duan Roland was dreaming about. The aura of the Rakshasa realm's invasion on her body was very serious. It was easy to imagine what her nightmare was about. What was the most disgusting thing about the Rakshasa realm? It was about repeating the past over and over again, forcing you to see this tragic scene, forcing you to remember the unfair treatment you received. Step by step, it aroused hatred, making it impossible for people to escape. In the dream, the person dreaming was not the master, but the people of the Rakshasa realm. This was what Xiao Jin had once seen a demonized spiritualist who had told her. So in the end, there was no way to escape. The hope of recovering after demonization was zero. Basically, one could only become a puppet of the demon. After all, the Rakshasa realm and the real world were not two related worlds. Xiao Jin couldn't control this kind of dream infiltration. After a while, Xiao Jin slowly said, "I didn't wake you up. I just didn't fall asleep. You should go to bed early." Duan Rian nodded softly. She was vaguely curious. Why was Xiao Jin still not sleeping in the middle of the night? She didn't know that Xiao Jin didn't need to rest at all. They were in the same room. As long as Duan Rian made any strange movements, she would immediately wake up. In the latter half of the night, Duan Rian didn't sleep much. Xiao Jin naturally didn't sleep either. However, when they woke up early in the morning, one was energetic and the other was dispirited. There was still a difference. However, there was an event today and everyone had to wake up early. Duan Rian had no choice. Perhaps she was destined to lose focus during today's study tour. The last batch of students arrived 2 hours late because their flight was delayed. When they arrived, it was already late at night, so the teachers did not disturb the students who had arrived earlier. Early in the morning, everyone gathered together happily and became familiar with each other. However, it was obvious that Xiao Jin was separated from the Mu brothers. Similarly, the Zhong siblings were also separated from each other. Naturally, the Mu clan was an influential figure, and no one else could come into contact with them. Zhong Lijia was a new transfer student. He had not even familiarized himself with the school before he followed them to the event. He did not even know many of his classmates. Moreover, they seemed to be either rich or noble. Naturally, they would not strike up a conversation with them. This group of students was also divided into several factions. The professor leading the team excitedly announced today's activities. Today, we will be meeting and exchanging knowledge with students from foreign famous schools. We will have joint activities for 2 days. Everyone can learn and communicate with each other. As for the rest, just treat it as viewing the scenery. We won't be returning to the hotel at night. We'll be staying at the event venue. But we'll be back when the time comes. You don't have to bring too many things. After the professor made the announcement, the group of students cheered. Communicating with students from foreign famous schools was also building a social network. It was beneficial for the future. As long as they had the ability. Of course, those who could come here for this event didn't have to worry about this. Even someone like Duan Rian had excellent results. Chapter 314. Xiao Jin didn't find it fun to meet people. Among the large group of students, she looked around and finally determined that Duan Rian was her target. Because no other students had any special reactions. But she had a vague feeling that something was wrong. She was the most eye-catching in the crowd. Any special behavior would attract attention, so she had always maintained a calm state. With Musilian and Musichu by her side to help her get things, the other female students were quite envious. Musilian and Duan Rian might not have a sister, so they were very conscious of being older brothers. They didn't look at Xiao Jin with disdain like before. Perhaps at that time, she wasn't very good-looking. Xiao Jin thought so. When they went out, Musichu took a sun hat and put it on Xiao Jin. He said concisely, "Sunscreen." Xiao Jin looked at the sun. In fact, the sun didn't hurt her. Instead, it was good for her. The ultraviolet rays that others were afraid of were nothing in their eyes. However, Xiao Jin didn't reject Musichu's kindness. Musilian even went to buy ice cream for Xiao Jin. Of course, in order to show his elegance as the little prince of the campus, he treated everyone in the student group to one, including the teachers. Everyone was flattered. They originally thought that these people were high and mighty, but now, an ice cream had closed the gap. In the past, they thought that they were all rich children, so they weren't to be trifled with. Now, they felt that they were quite approachable. Take this. You're Xiao Jin's roommate, right? I'll treat you guys. Muzillion stuffed an ice cream into Duan Ruyan's hand. Duan Ruyan took it in a daze. She didn't expect Muzillion to remember her. Although she was Xiao Jin's roommate, it also meant that the other party had a good memory. Of course, if she wasn't Xiao Jin's roommate, perhaps Muzillion wouldn't have remembered her. Duan Ruyan blinked. When the ice cream entered her mouth, it was very sweet. It was really sweet. The sweetness reached the bottom of her heart. She looked at the girl in the distance. She didn't turn back, but she was as beautiful as the sun, radiating light recklessly. Their group soon met up with the students from another famous school. Everyone took 3 buses in batches. Because they were all alternating, the order was messed up, and the teacher arranged it. This way, everyone would know other students at the first stop. Xiao Jin did not separate from the Mu brothers. He sat on a bus and looked at the blonde foreigners around him. In fact, the quality of foreign students was similar to that of domestic students. There were ordinary ones and handsome ones. Everyone seemed to be very enthusiastic. The first person that the foreigners had their eyes on was Xiao Jin. Some even came over to ask for Xiao Jin's phone number and wanted to have a pleasant academic exchange. However, before this step could be carried out, Mizuchu destroyed it. To him, any man who wanted to get close to his sister was like a pig trying to grab cabbage. Song Yanqing, forget it, except for brother Yanqing. Little did he know that his sister was sending a message to Song Yanqing with her head lowered. Jin Jinyo, I keep feeling that something is wrong. Xiao Jin rarely sent such an uncertain tone. Song Yanqing quickly replied when he saw the message, even though he was working. Song Yanqing, what's wrong? Tell me in detail, and I'll help you analyze it. Jin Jinyo, reality is mixed with falsehood. The other party is typing. After a long time, Song Yanqing sent a message helplessly. Song Yanqing, I seem to understand the meaning of this sentence, but I don't know the story behind it. Chapter 315. It's Jin Jinyo, I'll reply to you tonight. Song Yanqing, okay. Xiao Jin looked up. Surrounded by foreigners, she suddenly whispered, Chi Chu, can you check the information of the students this time? Mizuchu looked up at her. No, what do you want to do? Even if they were from the Mu family, the school was not run by their family. The principal and vice principal's background were even bigger than theirs. It was not realistic to check the students' information. Xiao Jin, then there's no need to ask anymore. Mizuchu, he frowned slightly. Why do you want to know the students' information for no reason? If you want to know, I can get off the bus and ask them one by one for you. Xiao Jin, that's too troublesome. At most, you'll know who they are. Will they tell you anything else? Mizuchu, it was not realistic, so he mentioned it casually. With his personality, he could not ask everyone's name with a cold face. Fortunately, Xiao Jin did not agree. Muzillion, what are you whispering about? Saying bad things behind my back. Xiao Jin, Mizuchu, to some extent, Muzillion was more like Mu Xiangshan's grandson. Mu Xiangshan, who was far away in China, suddenly sneezed. The bus swayed for a few hours. Along the way, the students chatted from novelty to sleepiness. Not excluding those who chatted passionately, a few hours were not a problem. Muzillion and Mizuchu had already begun to doze off. Only Xiao Jin opened her eyes and looked at the road outside the window gradually becoming barren. It was not as luxurious as the roads in the city. They were now on a desolate asphalt road, heading towards a small town. Why was the Rakshasa world so active now? She suddenly had this inexplicable thought. In her previous world, the Rakshasa world in her eyes was a world that had nothing to do with the real world. They had their own rules, and the human world had its own rules. And the current Rakshasa realm was abnormally active. Although Duan Ruyan could not see the Luosha realm, she had been entangled by demons. Those who could be entangled by demons were definitely not ordinary people. Was there something special about Duan Ruyan? Formation Master had yet to awaken. Qiao Jin paused. She suddenly thought of a possibility. However, he had to have the opportunity to verify this possibility. It was already past noon when they arrived at the small town. Everyone's stomachs were rumbling with hunger as they woke up one after another. Fortunately, the town was considered luxurious. There were cliffs around the town, and the foreign-style scenery was especially popular among the students. When everyone got out of the car and gathered together, Qiao Jin noticed that there was a spiritualist in the opposing team. Of course, she was not surprised that there was a spirit reader in a foreign country. The Zhong siblings were talking to the foreign student. Obviously, they knew each other. It seemed that the scale of the astral group was rather large. Yep, it was world-class. Once they left the small town, everyone was happy to keep each other company. With the help of the teachers, they found their respective hotels and guest houses. In addition, the small town had internet and surveillance, so the school allowed them to move freely. The foreign students went straight to the bar in the small town. This town was not small. It was a famous tourist town, and there were many tourists. There was a huge fountain in the middle of the town. It was a famous wishing square, and one could come here to make a wish. Qiao Jin did as the Romans did. Under Musichu's lead, she threw a coin into the pool to make a wish. The moment the coin fell into the water, she looked at the small splash and suddenly understood something. Chapter 316. Everyone else had their own activities to do. Musilian and Musichu were watching Qiao Jin. They were chatting with a few foreign students. Qiao Jin didn't like groups. She liked to be alone. She found an excuse to wander around the town. Musichu and Musilian were worried. They couldn't monitor her all the time. They only told her to answer the phone at all times. If she met a stranger, she shouldn't talk to them, and she shouldn't go with them. She didn't wander around. Soon, she found the teachers who were also drinking in the small bar. After all, it was rare for everyone to relax. The foreign professors were generous. They drank beer and had all kinds of academic discussions with their professors. The waiter who was mixing drinks for them looked like he was listening to a book. Qiao Jin found a male teacher. When she sat down, she casually asked, "Teacher, does our school come here every year?" The male teacher was a little surprised to see Qiao Jin. He immediately replied, "Of course not. Our school activities change places every year. We also change schools." Qiao Jin, "Oh. Then can students participate in this kind of activity every year?" The male teacher said directly, "Of course not. Generally speaking, we don't recommend students to come here repeatedly. When choosing, we consider students who haven't been here before." Of course, a school was so big. Only a few dozen students would come out of tens of thousands. Even if most of the students came from good families, they would still choose to experience it. Basically, there wouldn't be a repeat every year. Qiao Jin suddenly asked, "How many times has Duan Ruyan been here?" Duan. Oh, Duan Ruyan. The male teacher was suddenly enlightened. He said, "Of course it's her first time here." Qiao Jin smiled. "Teacher, I know it's abrupt, but are you sure? Has this town been used as an event location before?" The male teacher thought seriously. "Oh, I really don't know. The teachers who lead the team every year are different. I can help you ask. This wasn't a secret. The male teacher was just a little confused. Aren't you and Duan Ruyin roommates? Xiao Jin smiled. Of course we're roommates. Student Duan is a good classmate. Yes, yes. The male teacher also smiled and said, I remember that her grades were very good. Xiao Jin nodded. All right, thank you for your answer. She turned around, her smile fading away. She must have been to the school in this small town. She had just been by the wishing pool when she suddenly felt Duan Ruyin's aura. She had been here before. The annual activities of this school were rarely repeated. Duan Ruyin was only a sophomore this year. How could she have been here before? With her family background and current school conditions, it was impossible for her to go abroad. She lowered her head and sent Song Yanqing a message. It's Jin Jinyo, I know what's wrong. This is a formation. It's Jin Jinyo. She's not unawakened, she's already a demonized array master. After sending these two messages, she looked up and bumped into Duan Ruyin outside the bar. She looked a little lost and didn't know where to go. It didn't look like she was going to enter the bar. Xiao Jin saw Duan Ruyin and smiled faintly. Student Duan, where are you going? Duan Ruyin saw Xiao Jin and was about to say something when Yao Hongyin's voice came from not far away. Duan Ruyin, what are you doing? Didn't you see the message I sent you? Chapter 317. Duan Ruyin suddenly turned around and looked at Yao Hongyin. I didn't look at my phone. She was still trembling. It seemed that she was really afraid of Yao Hongyin. Xiao Jin looked at Yao Hongyin with interest. Yao Hongyin still didn't know what had happened to her. She still looked fierce. The moment she rushed over, she reached out to grab Duan Ruyin's arm. However, when she saw Xiao Jin, she suddenly stopped and withdrew her hand. Why was this jinx everywhere? In front of Xiao Jin, she really couldn't abuse Duan Ruyin. After all, they were classmates. What are you doing here? Why aren't you leaving? Yao Hongyin wanted to pull Duan Ruyin away. Duan Ruyin asked her, where are you taking me? Yao Hongyin glared at her with her back facing Xiao Jin. I already said that I'll call you over if there's something. You'll know when you get there. Duan Ruyin was speechless. She was silent. Her face looked a little pale. Seeing this, Xiao Jin didn't say anything. At this moment, the WeChat in his phone kept vibrating. Obviously, Song Yanqing had replied. Xiao Jin watched Duan Ruyin being pulled away by Yao Hongyin before looking down at the message. Song Yanqing, an awakened demonized array master. Song Yanqing, what's going on? If it was a demonized array master, the nature could be said to be much more serious. Xiao Jin said that demonized spiritualists would gradually become violent and murderous. This was also the reason why demonized spiritualists had to be eradicated. Furthermore, an array master was more dangerous than an ordinary spiritualist. Xiao Jin wanted to type, but typing was too troublesome. He directly made a phone call. When Song Yanqing saw the call, he made a pause gesture to the person on the other end of the video call. The person on the other end was obviously a little surprised, but he still nodded and let Song Yanqing answer the call. Song Yanqing stood up and walked to the side to answer the phone. As soon as he picked up, he heard Xiao Jin's calm voice. It's nothing serious. It just makes me feel a little strange. She should be the guide. What does guide mean? A demonized spiritual reader who works for the Rakshasa world. She's a formation master. It's a pity to let her lose her mind. The Rakshasa world usually raises such puppets in the human realm. Although they were two different worlds, since the Rakshasa realm needed a demonized spiritual reader, it must be useful. Ordinary demonized psychic masters were not worthy of the Rakshasa realm's attention, but special psychic masters were different. Xiao Jin was certain that Duan Rian was a demonized array master because she had heard Duan Rian's voice when she was by the wishing pond. She had been here before, and this was already something that was wrong. In addition, Xiao Jin saw it. I think there's something wrong with this school event. She couldn't have come here for no reason. Maybe what happened to her in the past was true, causing her to become a demonized spiritual reader. Song Yanqing also said, "What's the matter?" Xiao Jin deduced, "It's probably campus violence." This was very common. In fact, it was a little uncommon in key universities. This kind of school had a strong academic atmosphere because the students here were all elite students. Most of them were immersed in their daily studies and were too busy. There might be people who were not pleasing to the eye, but it was rare to see such a painstaking effort to target an ordinary student. In particular, the methods used seemed very despicable. It was hard to imagine. Song Yanqing nodded. The world is big. Anything can happen. Chapter 318. That was true. After all, there were all kinds of weirdos in fortune-telling. Xiao Jin was used to it now. In the past, there was no such thing as weirdos. Now, you think Duan Rian is a demonized array master and has probably been here a long time ago. If you want to know why, you have to dig out her secrets. Xiao Jin. Not necessarily. I can use some means, but I think there is someone else behind her. However, it depended on the person. Sometimes, Xiao Jin would use some methods to achieve her goal, although the other party was a demonized spiritual reader. However, Duan Rian gave her a different feeling. There was a sense of loss in her, like someone who had been lost in the long river of time and could not find the way back. If she had really been here, then she had other reasons for approaching Yao Hongyin. Xiao Jin, I'll take care of the rest myself. Song Yanqing, okay. After hanging up the phone, Xiao Jin keenly sensed that someone was approaching quickly from behind. However, she did not directly make a move since there was no malicious intent. Hi. She turned around and saw a tall and handsome foreign boy. He had brown curly hair and was particularly charming when he smiled. I heard your name is Xiao Jin. He spoke in Chinese, and it was surprisingly standard. Of course, the students here were all top students from famous schools, so it was not surprising that they were good at Chinese. This person was the foreign spiritual reader who had spoken to Zhongli Peining and her sister. Xiao Jin just said lightly, yes. Hello, my name is Jerson. He reached out his hand, revealing a row of big white teeth. He was bright and sunny. Can we be friends? Xiao Jin stared at his outstretched hand for about 3 seconds. No. Jerson, Xiao Jin's direct and straightforward rejection stunned him for a moment, but then he smiled again. It's okay. Maybe you are Chinese and think I'm too abrupt. Huaxia people seem to be like this. They were more shy. Perhaps they couldn't accept him talking about making friends. In fact, in Xiao Jin's mind, only Song Yanqing could be considered a friend. Friends had to be verified before they could be together. It was too easy for Gelson to make friends, and besides, she did not like to make friends. They were even less interested in foreigners like Jerson. She turned around and was about to leave. Jerson thought to himself that he was not ugly after all. Although there was a huge difference in aesthetic standards between the East and the West, he was recognized as handsome. Even Asians would say that they were handsome. Could it be that he was not handsome? Jerson thought it unlikely. It probably needs some buffering agent. Thinking of this, Jerson's eyes revealed a hint of naughtiness. He stared at the ground where Qiao Jin had walked, and suddenly something seemed to be about to rise out of it. The floor seemed to be pushed up. If it was at a normal angle, Qiao Jin should have slipped and fallen. His hand even made a gesture of catching it. However, the floor that was about to jump up was pressed down by a foot. In an instant, Qiao Jin turned around. Under the calm in his beautiful deep eyes, there seemed to be a hidden blade. I don't like people who don't know their limits. If there is a next time, you will pay the price. Jerson had never seen such a gaze. That pair of eyes was bright and beautiful. The gaze was as calm as water, but it hit a turbulent current. It made Jerson's hair stand on end. Chapter 319. Jerson immediately raised his hand. I'm sorry. A wise man submits to circumstances. At that moment, Jerson realized the powerful threat of Qiao Jin. No wonder the Zhong siblings said that this girl was not to be trifled with, but they clearly told him that she had the ability to predict the future. Oh, this was a somewhat outrageous psychic. Seeing Jerson raise his hand in surrender, Qiao Jin looked away and soon saw Musichu walking over from a distance. Musichu also saw Jerson and Qiao Jin. He came forward and glanced at Jerson, who was now stiff and embarrassed, and asked softly, "What did he just say to you?" He looked very unhappy. Naturally, Jerson had offended Qiao Jin. "Qiao Jin, no." She asked, "Where's Qilian?" "They're having fun together." Who was Muzilian? The little prince of disco. At this time, he must be making friends and gathering in a bar. Night was about to fall, and even the small town could usher in its own lively time. The bar was naturally the most lively place. Jerson took advantage of the time when Qiao Jin and Musichu were talking to each other. Bit by bit, like a crab, he slowly moved away. He just felt that this Chinese girl was beautiful and pure, like an angel in the Bible. Now he felt that she might have the face of an angel, the aura of hell. Musichu noticed Jerson's little movements and only said, "This person has a good relationship with the Zhong siblings who came with us." Musichu was also very observant. The Zhong siblings had just transferred to the school, but he already had some impression of them in this gathering. He also noticed their conversation with Jerson just now. They had obviously known each other for a long time. They happened to know each other in different schools and even met in this event. It could only be said that the Zhong family had a wide network. Musichu did not know about the psychic, so he did not know that there was another rule in this world. "Is that so?" Qiao Jin's response was somewhat perfunctory, but her eyes saw an interesting scene. Outside the town, a black sedan slowly drove in. It happened to be parked opposite where Qiao Jin was now. It was a small town hotel. From the car, a woman with a face full of happiness got out. Her lower abdomen was flat, but when she got out of the car, she carefully protected her stomach. Obviously, she was pregnant. On the other side, her husband, who was driving the car, carefully took care of her, looking very serious and caring. In addition, they had Asian faces, which made the people nearby take a few more glances at them out of curiosity. Musichu followed his gaze and said, "The scenery here is not bad, so tourists come here every year. There are quite a lot of Asians, but most of them are from our country." These two were probably the same. He could tell from their auras. Qiao Jin turned his head, indicating that she was just looking around. She wanted to go back to the hotel to rest, so she went back with Musichu. When they passed by the couple, the man just happened to come down with the luggage in the trunk. The luggage was a little heavy, and the woman said with concern, "De Xian, be careful. There are a few suitcases, don't sprain your back." When Qiao Jin and the others passed by, because of Qiao Jin's outstanding temperament, she even looked at them curiously. The man with the luggage had a bright smile on his face. "It's okay, Roland, I'm not that weak." When he finished speaking, his gaze inadvertently swept across Xiao Jin's face. Chapter 320. After returning to the hotel, Xiao Jin began to rest. The hotel this time was relatively small, so everyone had a single room. They were separated, but the soundproofing wasn't very good. The girls stayed on one floor, and the boys stayed on the other to avoid any accidents. Dozens of students stayed in two hotels. Because of the arrangement, a group of students stayed nearby. This time, there were only so many choices in the hotel. Musilian and Musichu had no choice. Xiao Jin lay on the bed and could hear the movements of the people next door. Of course, even if the soundproofing was good, she could still hear them. But after a while, it was a little, the flirtatious tone was mixed with strange gasps. These students were more daring than he had imagined. Of course, they were already university students, so this was normal. Ordinary people might blush when they heard this, but Xiao Jin didn't react. Humans had been like this since ancient times. It was just the act of reproduction. There was nothing special about it. However, someone couldn't bear to listen and suddenly cursed. Obviously, it scared the two lovebirds who were in love, and their voices quickly disappeared. There was no water in the room. When Xiao Jin went out to get the hot water, she bumped into Yao Hongyin coming out of the room next to hers. When she saw Xiao Jin, her face turned green and white. She didn't expect Xiao Jin to come back at this time. Shouldn't she be in town? Yao Hongyin couldn't explain her feelings. She subconsciously closed the door behind her. At least there was someone in there who couldn't be seen by Xiao Jin. However, Xiao Jin wasn't interested in looking at her at all. He walked past her without looking sideways. In contrast, Yao Hongyin was like a cooked prawn, red from head to toe. It was rare for her to know what shame felt like. Just now, Yao Hongyin took Duan Rian away, but now she was here. It had only been half an hour. When Xiao Jin came back from getting the hot water, Yao Hongyin had returned to normal. She was thick-skinned. At this moment, she looked at Xiao Jin as if nothing had happened. "Hello, Xiao Jin." Her smile was very charming, with the youthful vitality of a modern university student. However, Xiao Jin walked past her as if he didn't hear her. This made Yao Hongyin smile instantly gloomy. Such disregard was like a slap to her face, bringing a certain degree of humiliation to her personality. Isn't it just climbing up to the Mu clan? Climbing up to the Mu clan. What right did she have? Yao Hongyin was furious, and her whole body seemed to be trembling. However, if no one paid attention to her, her actions would be as laughable as a clown's. When Xiao Jin was about to enter the house, Yao Hongyin suddenly heard a very cold and ethereal voice. "I advise you to turn over a new leaf as soon as possible." Yao Hongyin was speechless. She became even more furious. What did Xiao Jin mean? What did she mean? Was it because he had hooked up with a foreign exchange student? Did she feel ashamed of it? She was just a university student. Wasn't this behavior normal? However, she didn't know that Xiao Jin's words meant something else. He meant well. If Yao Hongyin changed and became a good person now, there might be a chance to save herself. The death aura had already wrapped around her head. It was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper was ready to cut her. If Xiao Jin's guess was right, Yao Hongyin was probably going to be dead. As for why, it probably had something to do with Duan Rian. She just reminded him and wouldn't interfere in others' affairs. The fate of others had nothing to do with her. Chapter 321. She went into her room, blocked out the noise around her, and rested for a while. When it was night time, Mizuchu called her to go downstairs for dinner. Xiao Jin got up, washed up, and went downstairs for dinner. Mizuchu was ready to go that night. When he saw her, he said, "Don't be bored all the time. Won't it be fun if we go together?" Xiao Jin, "I'm not interested." Mizuchu, "Miss, what is the purpose of this activity?" If she didn't participate in any activities and didn't interact with any classmates, what was the point of Xiao Jin signing up? Xiao Jin, "Because I'm bored." Mizuchu, instant kill. Okay, Missy's mind wasn't something that ordinary people could understand. Mizuchu, "You really don't want to go? We'll all go to the bar in town later. Don't worry, we're all decent people. We'll just drink. If you don't want to drink, you can drink something else." "I'm going too." "Are you sure you don't want to go?" Xiao Jin, "Okay." Mizuchu, he didn't expect Xiao Jin to agree so quickly this time. He was a little caught off guard. Mizuchu looked at Xiao Jin with a hint of suspicion and didn't say anything. After dinner, a large group of people went to the bar. This activity was supported by the teachers. The bar here was very formal, and it was full of tourists. It was understandable for the university students to exercise. Duan Ruyan was also in the crowd. Her face was even paler than before. Yao Hongyin was still standing next to her. She just didn't know who was controlling who. Duan Ruyan seemed to have noticed something. She looked up and saw Xiao Jin in the crowd. His eyes were focused in front of him and didn't seem to be looking at her. Duan Ruyan's face dimmed for a moment. Today, they booked the entire bar. Even if other tourists were here, they could drink to their heart's content. The bar was considered a large building in the town. The logo outside was very European style, and the lights at night flashed with colorful lights. However, when Xiao Jin approached, she smelled a burnt smell. It smelled like something was burned. The smell was only faintly discernible. She looked around and didn't find anything wrong. She realized something. Seeing that Xiao Jin was stunned, Mizuchu grabbed her arm and whispered, "It's okay, I'll accompany you." He thought that because Xiao Jin had been to a bar before, he was now resistant to such places. After all, she had been injected with drugs here before. Xiao Jin shook his head. She followed the crowd into the bar. As soon as they entered the bar, the burnt smell became even stronger, but the others didn't have any reaction. Obviously, they couldn't smell it. In that case, it wasn't their problem. He was the one who smelled the scent of the past. Xiao Jin closed his eyes. There had been a fire here. It should have been very big. The fire was very fierce, and it caused irreparable damage. Therefore, it left a deep memory of the past. She opened her eyes. Red dots flickered in her eyes. She saw a different scene. This used to be a hotel-like building. It was surrounded by closed doors. A figure was running inside, screaming miserably. "Save me, I beg you to let me out. There's a fire, let me out. Ah! I'm in so much pain, I beg you to save me, save me." Chapter 322. The mournful and desperate cries were like a lingering nightmare that lingered in her ears. She opened her eyes. The music in the bar was deafening. The enthusiastic foreign students had already started rolling. Muzilian was really the most handsome boy on the dance floor. Clearly, he had developed his advantages in China. There were a few foreign female students around him. Xiao Jin looked away. She saw Duan Ruyan sitting at the side. Yao Hongyin was whispering to a foreign boy. She was sitting next to them, drinking a glass of something that she didn't know was alcohol. She drank it one by one like a soulless puppet. At this moment, Xiao Jin saw the male teacher she had asked during the day walking towards her. Xiao Jin. The male teacher was very polite. I've asked the school about what you asked me this afternoon. We did come here once for an activity, but it was a long time ago, about 20 years ago. The specific details were updated by the school many years ago. Some of them are gone, so I can't let you know more. Xiao Jin nodded and smiled. Thank you, teacher. Perhaps it wasn't that the school didn't have any information, but that they didn't dare to release it. Naturally, they wouldn't let a student know. Musichu saw the male teacher leave and was a little curious. What did the teacher say to you? Xiao Jin said, nothing. He just asked if the school had been here before. Why are you asking about this? Musichu revealed a rare smile. Are you curious about this? Xiao Jin, I'm just asking. She said to Musichu, I'm going to walk around. You can go play with Qi Lian. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me. Musichu's eyes were deep. You always do things that are out of line. She wasn't like an ordinary girl who wanted to avoid others' eyes. Xiao Jin smiled and walked towards the bar counter. Musichu didn't follow her. It was fine as long as she was within sight. There were many people and the bar was very noisy. Xiao Jin asked a few of the bar staff in elegant and fluent English. Only then did he find out a secret. This bar used to be converted from a hotel. It was said that there was a big fire and everything was burned down. In order not to let this place go to waste, the government rebuilt the bar and business was very good. As for what was burned in the fire, no one knew. They had only moved to the small town in recent years, so there were many things that they did not know. He only knew that it used to be a hotel, but now it was a bar. This matched the memory Xiao Jin saw. Something had happened to this bar before. A hotel had been burned down. What had happened inside? Someone had probably been burned to death. In fact, it was very common for people to die in a fire, but it would not leave such a deep impression that Xiao Jin could sense it the moment he entered. Maybe something else happened. In his memory, the person who was burned to death was crying for help, but no one came to save her. A hotel wouldn't lock a person up in the hotel for no reason. 20 years ago, the school held a similar event. Her gaze gently swept over Duan Ruyan. It was enough to connect some things. 20 years ago, the person who was burned to death in the hotel was probably Duan Ruyan. In other words, it was difficult to determine whether the current Duan Ruyan was a person or not. The array formation could allow her to sense, but she could not completely know the details of what had happened in the past. What she wanted to know was why Duan Ruyan was here. Chapter 323. The school's information was confidential. As a student, she didn't have the power to obtain it directly. It was even more unrealistic to speculate with arrays. Most arrays were used to trap others. Seeing the past and knowing the future was the ability of a spiritual speaking master. Xiao Jin could set up a heaven-defying array, but he was just a demonized array master. She didn't have anything better to do. Some things, as long as one wanted to investigate, would always leave some traces. Since Duan Ruyan appeared here and had some contact with her, there must be a result of this matter. Xiao Jin asked a few students about Duan Ruyan's memories. Because these students had contact with Duan Ruyan under the circumstances she saw. Among them, there were a few boys who were close to Yao Hongyin. They had controlled Duan Ruyan together. They seemed to know her name, age, which department she was studying, and how her grades were. But they didn't know where she lived, where she was from, or which school she was from. They only remembered one-sided memories of the school. In other words, this memory might be fake. Xiao Jin concluded that there was definitely no one called Duan Ruyan in this student activity. She only existed in the memories of the teachers and students. As for Yao Hongyin, who was close to her, Xiao Jin narrowed her eyes. After this event, there would probably be 2 students removed from the school's memory at the same time. After asking around, Xiao Jin returned to her original position. Musichu knew that Xiao Jin wouldn't say anything if he asked Xiao Jin, so he didn't say much. On the dance floor, Musilian was so high that he forgot himself. This student activity didn't seem to be as boring as he had imagined. The one who roared the most reluctantly at the beginning was now having the most fun. If it weren't for Musichu's stare, Musilian would have already started flirting with one of the foreign girls. Xiao Jin glanced at him and suddenly asked Musichu, "Does he usually dance like this at home?" Musichu. I don't know. He did not attend such events. Usually, it was Musilian who went. He glanced at the Musilian on the dance floor and sighed, "That's about it." Xiao Jin, yes. She looked at it for a while and felt that it was not very interesting, so she said that she wanted to go out for a walk. Musichu couldn't stop her, and he was a little worried about her in the middle of the night, so he went with her. Not long after leaving the bar, Xiao Jin once again saw the couple she had seen during the day. At this moment, the woman was standing at the side making a phone call. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that the man standing next to her had a slightly impatient look on his face. However, the corners of his lips curled into a gentle arc, as if he was extremely patient with this woman. "Oh, I know. I'll be careful. I'm on my honeymoon. Don't talk about these awful things." Zhao Rolan hung up the phone. Wei Dixuan asked her gently, "What's wrong?" Zhao Rolan sighed. "It's all about my god-sister." Sigh. "Let's not talk about it." She glanced at Wei Dixuan as if she was avoiding and hesitating. After all, it was not good to talk about what had happened back then. They were already married and were now on their honeymoon. It was only the first day, and Lin Si had called her from afar to remind her of these terrible things, which made her a little unhappy. She pinched the jade around her neck and felt a little cold. When she looked up, she saw Xiao Jin. This beautiful girl had seen him during the day, and now she saw him again. Chapter 324. Zhao Rolan was just curious. Anyone who saw a beautiful person would take a second look. But she didn't think too much about it. However, Wei Dixuan's gaze circled around Xiao Jin again, as if he could still feel the disgusting probing in the depths of his eyes. Afraid of arousing Zhao Rolan's suspicion, Wei Dixuan quickly turned his head and said sweetly to Zhao Rolan, "Your god-sister called you because she cares about you. I envy you for having a sister who cares about you so much." Zhao Rolan glanced at Wei Dixuan. "Doesn't your sister care about you? I remember that they often call you. After all, she's your god-sister, and you're her biological sister." Wei Dixuan's face stiffened. He was raised by a rural family, so naturally, he couldn't compare to Zhao Rolan's single-parent family. "Of course, they all care about me." Wei Dixuan quickly left with Zhao Rolan in his arms. Xiao Jin and Musichu quickly returned to the hotel. Xiao Jin received a message from the cat treasure. It was Lin Si, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. "Missing is better than past. Hey, master. I'm sorry to disturb you, but my sister and her husband are on their honeymoon now. I don't know where they went, and my mother refused to tell me." Equals because of what Xiao Jin had once divined, Lin Si had always had a knot in her heart. Now that she knew that Xiao Jin was different from before, she basically didn't send messages to Xiao Jin anymore. It was just that Zhao Rolan and Wei Dixuan had just gotten married. She watched the video of the wedding. Although it was sweet, she felt that something was wrong. Now, she could only send a message to the master, hoping that he wouldn't dislike her for talking too much. Today, so you can only watch. Missing is better than past, the master's words were still so hurtful. Missing is better than past, master, will anything happen to them on their honeymoon this time? Today, it's hard to say. Missing is better than past, missing is better than past. Missing is better than past, my sister is already pregnant. He can't be so crazy, right? However, Xiao Jin didn't say anything. She thought of Zhao Roland's belly today. Yes, she was indeed pregnant. But so what? For a person with a purpose, even if she was pregnant, it wouldn't stop his determination to a certain extent. Instead, it would become a bargaining chip to clear his name. His calculations were pretty good. Xiao Jin didn't care about this kind of thing. It was a person's life. If he could avoid it, then he would avoid it. If he couldn't, then it would be gone. It was a very simple matter. She had done her best to remind him. That night, she went to bed very early. Many students who went to the disco party came back very late. Although it was very noisy, they did not wake up Xiao Jin, who was sleeping soundly. When they woke up in the morning, the professor announced that there would be a short academic exchange today. After the exchange, they would return to the hotel in the city and then officially go to the other party school to visit and listen to the lectures of the famous professors. Musilian had gone to the disco party very late last night, but he was still in high spirits when he woke up this morning. Most students were used to staying up late to study. People with active minds basically slept very little, but it was still rare to see someone in a good state of mind like Musilian. Many foreigners gave Musilian a thumbs up. After everyone had gathered and the academic exchange was about to end, Yao Hongyin arrived late and complained a little. What's going on? Why didn't anyone call me?